Oh. Hey, look at that. I actually did an intro. I actually did it without messing up today. Hi, everybody. Hello, hello. Happy Friday. It's Friday. Hey, it's Friday. My name, of course, is Hexplay, your head guild master and chief barista, and today is a Finding Out Friday type of day where we sit down and just watch videos of things that may be science adjacent and or learning. So, we have a lot to get through because dang, there are a lot of submissions. So I'm gonna also double check for one more before we get started here. As you can tell, I'm kind of a little bit more jumpy and excited, mainly because I did have Dr. Pepper today, and I did eat a McRib. So you know, I could take on the world honestly. Let me just double check one thing here. If we can find maybe a fun, dangerous thing. Oh, this one's actually good. I'll save that one for later. So let's get started. Let's see here. Yeah, it's the power of pork. It's the power of very cheap pork, and the power of really just not. Am I fun and dangerous? You are fun and dangerous. I think that's the best thing to talk. It's the best thing to compliment your partner, calling them dangerous and okay, so this one is about oopsie, no, hold on. Oh, why is it not working? Hold on. Oh wait, no, I was using the I was controlling the wrong capture. Oopsie. There we go. There we go. This one is from Super Bunny Hop. It's about gaming in East Germany, which I've actually never seen. I have never seen this video. I've never seen a lot of Super Bunny Hop stuff. So this will be new to me. All right, let's get started. Oh, there's no captions.
After the end of World War II, the world was split into two, East and West. This marked the beginning of the era called the Cold War. The Computer Game Museum in Berlin, located in the eastern half of the city on a miles-long stretch of open-wide road called Karl Marx Alley, has a back corner specifically set up to showcase high-tech artifacts from a country that no longer really exists. East Germany, the so-called German Democratic Republic, or GDR, was the home of about 16 million people who had to watch the rise of companies like Atari and Nintendo from the sidelines. Here's a metaphor. Sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, but in the case of Americans trying to get a hold of Cuban cigars, they instead represented the difficult intersection between politics and luxury, not unlike East Germans trying to get a taste of the rise of video games during the mid-80s. The demand was there. The demand was huge, in fact, but the literal and figurative wall between East Germany and capitalist luxury meant that their games were copies of what people had in the West, and they were made by developers who were under-equipped with knowledge of what they were even copying. There are still Germans to this day who would probably be surprised to hear that the GDR had video games at all. In 1949, the Cocom Embargo was enacted by Western countries preventing their companies from exporting modern technology to the Eastern Bloc. And by the 80s, that list included computers and electronics. The economic isolation of Soviet countries, plus their government-planned economies chasing after the Marxist ideal of small, self-sustaining communities, meant that supply and demand did not decide what ended up on the market. Government policies did. GDR factories had a hard cap on how many computers they were allowed to produce, and it wasn't enough to sell them on store shelves to the general population. During the months when this system worked, it provided basic necessities at very, very cheap prices. But luxuries like video games were never going to be a big priority, and properly sustaining the system in the first place relied on a workforce that wouldn't leave for the temptation of Western luxuries, which meant that the system didn't work.
As much as
One-way
I'm not
immigration
complaining
was
about the fact that it's history, I enjoy it very
economy
much so.
Throughout all of its history.
But dang,
the country's location within range of Western TV and radio stations meant that despite strict censorship laws, the people knew about computer games and had reason to get a hold of them. So in the early 80s in the GDR, demand for Western tech was high, and production for homegrown Eastern computers was beginning to trickle into the 5-year plans of various Soviet-influenced governments. So although Nintendo released the NES in West Germany in 1986, importing the machine into East Germany wasn't allowed by Western governments. While on the other side of the curtain, Eastern governments wanted that technology but couldn't import it. But an even higher priority was that they did not want the media that technology could play. Data storage like cassettes, discs, and cartridges weren't allowed through customs. The official reasoning was to prevent Western propaganda from going through the borders. The real reason was more likely to keep the temptation of immigrating to the West out. So while it was legal for an Easterner to bring back a video game machine, traveling outside to get one was a process that required so much paperwork, interviewing, and disposable cash that it was out of reach for most East Germans. Older pensioners had less travel restrictions than normal citizens. So the usual method was to have a wealthy uncle or grandparent bring over a Western computer to nerdy grandkids back home. So another popular method were these Gen X catalogs, gifts to the GDR, where wealthy Western relatives could send poor Eastern relatives gifts. But this was really only for the filthy rich. The goods were funneled through neutral nations, and all those middlemen had to get paid somehow in addition to the GDR government itself. So about 200,000 Commodore 64, ZX Spectrums, and other Western computers did make it over there, but they could only get there by being imported informally by individuals. There were no big businesses doing this on a real commercial scale. Meanwhile, the Russian solution to these problems, their unofficial NES clone, the Dendy, wasn't to be released until 1992, a couple years after David Hasselhoff tore down this wall. Until then, East Germans were just stuck with knockoff Pong machines that cost as much as a month's salary. So if you were an East German kid growing up in the 80s with average working class parents, PC gaming was the more realistic and popular choice, as it still is right now in Germany. But back in the 80s, kids with the most powerful and expensive machines in the GDR
plays games
still had to
on
make
PCs
a lot
now.
of compromises. The bizarre rules, contradictory inefficiencies, and clever workarounds faced by gamers living inside this country is archived at this museum. And what fascinated me for days after leaving this place
we all know about
was
what
how
happened
different
in the US,
a lot of the GDR's technology was, despite the idea
long
of being to
controls.
copycat a lot of existing Western tech.
Ooh,
the limiting
keyboard.
material shortages and factory allowances is something visible all over the exhibit, like on this vinyl record disc that has computer software loaded onto it. For a few years of the 80s, vinyl LPs were a cheaper storage medium over there than cassettes or floppies, not to mention the occasional instances where audio encoded software was broadcasted over the radio. But all of that wasn't super relevant.
They were
when it
robust
came time
enough
for
to
a
last
customer
through the
to just
airwaves?
buy a
That's
video
pretty cool.
game. But it was a hugely limiting factor for the would-be developers at the top of the supply chain who could have been making games during that whole time. The technology embargo and the shortages were the two factors that decided that the gaming market of East Germany and of other bloc countries would be dominated by crappy pirated knockoffs for decades, even after the fall of the Soviet Union. To see these abstract policies in concrete action, here's a more personal story.
Is that in a binder?
A spiel on computer spiels, as told by German game developer Andre Weisflog. Nowadays, he's programming for a company called Big Point Games, whose latest big project was a freemium RPG called Drakensang Online, but decades earlier, he was one of only a handful of people to ever make money programming games in the GDR.
Wow, I didn't know that was the story
explained by
CD Projekt
memoirs
Red.
on his website, plus in an email conversation between the two of us. Andre Weisflog grew up making his early games in 1987 on the KC-85/3. It was an 8-bit East German computer that used a clone of an American chip from 1976. And though this was cutting edge in the East, it was running at about half the speed of the closest Western machine, the ZX Spectrum, which also used the Zilog Z80s, except theirs were the real deal. Although the development of a reliable clone of that chip was a real breakthrough moment for the East, and although their engineers were squeezing more capability out of the KC-85 than the original late 70s computers the chip was intended for, these factors here explain why a lot of Eastern gaming trends across the whole region
I can't even have a say in much of this
right
now.
Behind the rest of the world. And back in late 80s East Germany, the stuff they were putting out looked more like it was from the early 80s. But before all that, Andre didn't have a home computer of his own, so he joined a local computer club that would divvy up time on Z1013s at neighborhood schools. And those were computers that could only output 32 by 32 pixels of ASCII artwork when they weren't displaying black and white lines of text. The KC-85/3 represented the next generation of possibilities to make and play games, but its price tag of 3,500 East German marks was roughly equivalent to about 1/3 of a low-end car, and it was payable in a currency that you couldn't buy a cheaper Western computer in if you could find one. That put it out of most people's reach. In addition to that, normal citizens weren't even allowed to order one. The idea of distributing everything to those that needed it most meant that high-end office equipment was reserved only for business customers. Luckily, Andre Weisslog's parents had a craftsmanship business, so they took a huge leap of faith by switching entirely to self-employment, thus allowing them to mail order their son a KC85/3 for the family office, which was on paper the business's office, except it was really the living room because they had to plug it into the family TV. Meanwhile, back at the KC85 factory, production was more focused on pocket calculators. The entire country's worth of computers were being made at a rate of 6 units per day, so Andre had to wait 6 whole months for delivery. In the meantime,
Talk
he
about
played
component
games
shortage.
the best way he knew he could, which was a yearly fair organized by his town that had a guy show up who'd set up a tent, put a bunch of Western arcade cabinets underneath it, and modify them to accept GDR coins. This was the only way you could play older Western arcade games like Pac-Man and Pingo, so Andre would play the hell out of them for a few days, memorize how they worked, and try to deconstruct them in his brain. Then he'd go home and reconstruct them on the KC85 so he could keep playing them later. Some of his arcade clones are still playable today in a browser window with an emulator he made. And what caught my eye was how he would publish his home address on the game's starting screens. As it turns out, it was a common practice to post ads in tech magazines with your address on them so you could share and even develop software with other gamers elsewhere in the country. Floppy disks were typically too expensive for this, so if it wasn't cassette tapes of software being mailed, then it was printed out pages of source code itself. Because sometimes these guys were debugging and building new software with each other through the magazine through the mail. Slowly but surely, a small scene of homegrown East German game development cropped up, and word of Weisberg's game spread up to the company that made his computer. They paid him to update his games for the upcoming KC85/4, although he doesn't actually know if those games ever made it to mass production. This is the method that other game developers were being hired for to make another notorious GDR staple, the Polyplay, the one and only arcade cabinet built in the country, and for many East Germans, this was the only arcade machine available at all. The Polyplay is a piece of gloriously tacky 70s wood paneling.
Oh my god.
The same Zilog Z80 clone chip to power a cabinet offering
It looks
a
like
selection of 8 games.
Homunculus of an arcade cabinet in my old TV when I was a kid.
Movement that you usually saw in early PC games rather than in the arcades in 1986. For comparison, know that this is the same year Outrun and Gauntlet 2 came out. The Polyplay games don't just look, but also feel behind their era as well, with the analog joystick snapping you in and out of very digital, stiff 4-way movement, because it's not really a joystick at all, but a lever mashing down on 4 buttons below. This is a piece that the museum has since apparently had to replace with a more familiar lollipop design. While authorship of the individual games here remains unknown, the Polyplay's origins as a government project overseen by the East German secret police, the Stasi, became known in the mid-2000s.
Wait, why was it?
I'm not even kidding about that.
What?
The Polyplay served a double role as both a recreational source of entertainment, but also as an international propaganda campaign. After news that violent video games like River Raid and Commando were already being banned in West Germany,
oh shit, are we talking about violent
East
video
Germany
games?
used that as an opportunity to preach that Western countries were poisoning their children on violent
Oh
media.
shit, we're talking about violence in video games!
Were written as being inhumane and cruel. Most historians point to a 1989 Funk
The
on
80s,
article
let's go.
called Bombs, Bullets, and Slaughter, in which the author rails on the violence glorified in Western games. But of course, if the case was that the games were being made by fellow comrades instead, the party line changed to, quote, "Computer games possess subjective tendencies to convey the ideas and values of socialism by means of play and fable." So what did the East German government do in response to the Western government restricting the freedom for their citizens to buy violent media? They restricted the freedom for their citizens to make any violent media at all. As far as the rest of the world needed to know, East Germany's games were going to be the most peaceful and wholesome of all. So anything that ended up on the official government brand Polyplay arcade entertainment device, which ended up in government brand swimming pools, game halls, and other rec centers, as well as the government headquarters in the East German Palace, had to meet a secret rating standard enforced by the government's Secret Intelligence Bureau, which meant no war games were allowed, no violence at all for that matter.
This is a very,
Even shooting down invading UFO spaceships wasn't allowed. That minigame got pulled as soon as one teacher complained about it. So the Polyplay they have up and running at the museum in Berlin has a Pac-Man clone. There's a game where you have to bucket up a bunch of water there and throw it out the window. You can go skiing. There's kind of an interesting
free
gimmick
ski.
happening in that one.
Oh, that
You have
one's
to
fun.
keep making sharp turns or else you speed out of control. Among all the games here, the only creatures that have to die are the deer in this hunting game at the top of the list, which plays like a worse version of Robotron.
I was gonna say, isn't that
2084.
like the
And
mini
there
game
was a
in like
morbid joke
Oregon
about this
Trail?
game being tossed around at
This
the
is
time,
what this one looks
that
like.
it only made it through and got included because Erich Honecker, East Germany's brutal leader of its final 20 years, the guy who would later face trials for the refugees shot at the Berlin Wall, enjoyed hunting in his spare time. GDR's
hunting's
homebrew
fine.
PC game developers might have gotten hired out to make that stuff, but even what they did on their free time at home didn't escape the eyes of the authorities, as seen in the case of Raimo Bunson's Revolution. This is a game that has you shooting down USA-backed Honduran Contra rebels to save the Soviet-backed Sandinistas. You'd think the Soviet-influenced authorities would approve of this as a propaganda piece,
Oh,
right?
shit.
You play on their side of the proxy war. Nope. Weeks after releasing this game, Bunson's father was suddenly called into the office of his party secretary and grilled about how irresponsible he was to be letting his son program war games. Bunson would have only been 12 at the time. 3 years later, in 1989, Ronald Reagan tears down the Berlin Wall and it's all over.
I thought they said-
The polyplays are recalled and recycled for scrap. The companies that made the KC-85 are dissolved and
Oh,
sold off to
no.
private investors. KC games themselves stop appearing after about 1992. Once the wall fell and superior Western computers came pouring in, KC-85 developers like Raimo Bunson had their specializations become obsolete overnight. They were very quickly thrown away in favor of Western tech. After making a bunch of games for free and then getting in trouble with the secret police for it and then being stuck knowing a computer no one wanted to work with, Bunson decided to become a lawyer instead.
Oh,
So
that
even
sucks.
after reunification, it seems
Oh,
to
that's
take
a
almost a
sucky
decade for the
change.
laws to change, skills to be redeveloped, and money to be saved all over again before East Germans are finally able to publish and sell high-quality original video games on par with the rest of the
Oh, hey,
industry.
Spec
But the
Ops.
lingering effects of a half-century of Soviet influence has left East Germany economically behind its western half, even to this day. The majority of the most famous German games come from companies headquartered in Western cities, founded by kids who grew up in Western cities. Here's a list of a GameStar editor's favorites, in no particular order, but
Oh, wow.
picked because I felt it would be more representative of the local tastes than like a list from Forbes or something. So if you ever need an example of the complicated intersection between politics and entertainment, look no further than these stories explaining what it was like playing video games in East Germany.
Jeez. I didn't realize. It's so interesting to find out how video games and computer stuff involved, like, or got involved with politics and stuff. Like, jeez, you know? Speaking of G's and government cheese. This is a video about government cheese. Which is kind of weird. But hey, it's a weird transition. Like, this is the weird one, and then we get to, like, cell phones for, like, the next maybe hour or so. The push and pull of tech and culture. Yeah, tech, culture, politics. You put it all together and it gets very interesting. Anyway, cheese. This is about cheese.
The government manages a lot of things. Air and water quality, roads and bridges, the tone of the national conversation. Also, once upon a time, a heckload of cheese.
Oh no. Who does that to a diorama?
It all started in 1976.
Okay.
Jimmy Carter was running for
I'm
president,
interested.
and he started floating this idea.
Although I am a farmer, I am not in favor of guaranteeing farmers a profit. I am in favor of giving farmers an equal break.
This wasn't just political pandering. There's an argument that our country has to be able to produce its own food, because relying on other countries for food, that's a national security risk.
Who does this?
Now, this was
I
a
don't-
campaign promise that nobody really expected him to fulfill. But then, he became president, and in
Man, that's a
1977,
really boring
he announced
Oval
his plan
Office.
to help farmers. And he wasn't alone. Congress wanted in.
We now go
Jeez.
live to the Capitol.
We also love the farmers.
And so they passed a law for dairy farmers, saying that they wanted the price of milk to go up automatically every 6 months. There are two ways to make that happen. You either lower the supply by telling milk producers to produce less milk, or increase the demand. Our government decided that increasing consumption was more American than agriculture quotas. So they started buying milk themselves.
The Carter administration has announced a new program to increase the demand of milk.
Huh?
Milk prices are expected to rise as the demand for
Buckle up, Bessie.
Aw.
But the
cute
thing
cow.
about milk is it's kind of hard to stockpile and transport. You'd have to get all these huge tankers, and of course, it starts going bad the minute it's out of the cow. So they moved one step down the supply chain to dairy-based products, like cheese. The way this program worked is that the federal government says,
We will buy as much cheese, butter, or non-fat
Oh,
dry
the
milk
socialized
as you
cheese.
wanna sell
I'm
us.
learning about cheese today, guys.
government
I
buys
don't
more
get-
cheese, cheesemakers buy more milk,
Government
and the resulting
cheese.
demand pushes the price of milk up. The government is creating a price floor, and in order to do this, they have to be willing to buy all of the cheese that anybody wants to sell them at this price. And if you're a cheese seller and you hear this, you're like, well, I'm gonna just sell them my worst cheese at that price. So to prevent this, the government said, look, if we're gonna buy your cheese, first, you have to meet with Bob. Bob Ashabrock was a cheese grater. No, cheese grater, like what a teacher does. Bob's job was to make sure that all of the cheese met
Met
USDA Grade A cheddar standards. He spent 30 years testing and tasting cheese.
I'm
for the
sure this
United
is not
States
how you
government.
do this, but you know what?
He'd use
Whatever.
his cheese trying equipment to look for the 17 flavor defects that could happen in cheddar cheese. Flat, bitter, yeasty, malty, acidic, old milk, fruity, metallic, sour, whey taint, weedy, onion, barney, lipase, and sulfate. It just goes on. Bob and his fellow
stomach
cheese
diarrhea.
graters were on the road all the time, just eating cheese. And the government just kept buying and buying.
I don't.
Before long, every warehouse in Wisconsin was full. There was cheese in practically every cold storage in the United
This seems
States.
kind.
And
This
the
sounds like a
government needed
horror
an
story.
Even bigger space to put it in.
This sounds like the start of a
Ideally,
horror
one
story.
with its own temperature controls.
A little
So they
scared
began
right now.
renting these caves in Kansas,
Whoa.
35 feet beneath the ground, the size of 120 football fields, and trainloads of cheese started to show up. And when news gets out that the government is filling caves with cheese, the press goes
This
nuts.
is a horror
I'm
story.
Steve Inskeep. Cheese Span is reporting that the latest chatter in cheddar is the cheese cave crisis.
This
Ron
is what
Elving
National
is
Treasure
The
was
rind
about.
is off the government.
Yeah, they're
cheese
going for
program.
that cheddar, you know. That-
Eventually, Jimmy Carter
that
left
cheddar.
office, and Ronald Reagan
That
was
money.
left to figure out what to do with all of this cheese. The government was buying
Nuclear
one in every
football.
4
Did you guys
pounds
see that? He was holding the fucking nuclear football. Ah.
of the country's cheddar cheese.
Don't throw it.
Well, my God, Jimmy. It's all cheese.
And the clock was
Uh-oh.
ticking because all this cheese was starting to get moldy. So the
Uh-oh.
government needed to find a market for the stuff, and fast.
Well, they have to be careful because of something called commercial displacement. If they just send a flood of cheese onto the market, they'll end up hurting the producers they're trying to help by providing a less expensive product to meet existing demand.
So the government had the cheddar reprocessed into new bricks and started giving it away at food banks.
Okay.
The idea was that these consumers probably weren't going to buy cheese anyway, so
New
you're not
cheese.
necessarily hurting the market. And lo, a new pop culture icon was born.
Oh, there's the government cheese.
cheese make the best grilled cheese you'd have never had in your life.
Where do you buy government cheese?
You don't buy it.
You have to be on.
You got to be on their special mailing list.
You gotta be on the plan.
Huh.
You're gonna end up eating a steady diet of government cheese and living in a van down by the river.
So that's why.
The government cheese caves started to empty out.
Huh.
The guaranteed milk price, which had been going up automatically every 6 months, was eventually frozen. But that does not mean the government had fixed the problem. The thing about price controls is that once you start them, they are really, really hard to unwind. This is a basic supply and demand problem. The government was demanding an unnatural amount of milk, and so farmers were supplying an unnatural amount of milk. One part of the solution then was to gently get that milk supply down. So the government literally paid dairy farmers to stop producing milk. That did some good. And then on the other side, the government tried to replace some of their artificial demand for milk with new, real demand for milk, which led to things like
The Got Milk campaign. Huh.
So this weird campaign promise had a hand in basically the two most important
Nuclear
dairy
football.
moments in pop culture. And it served as an instant signifier of a government program gone fully off the rails.
That was the weirdest documentary I've ever seen about cheese. Government to say pays companies more if their product has cheese. I don't know how to feel about this because I feel like I was like at the tail end of that joke and I'm not sure why. Like I was at like the tail end of the culture where we did talk about that and I never really understood it. So now this is great. And this is why Americans love cheese so much. Oh, okay, well, yeah. Lots of dairy stuff. Also, I want to look at the footage of the cow for a couple more seconds. No, the cow's gone. Aw. I want to watch the cow. Dang it. Okay, what's the next thing? Okay, so we're going to get through a very large block about cell phones. Like a lot of them. It's a lot of cell phones. But to be fair, these are the funky cell phones, so that means they're cool.
The world of 10 years ago can sometimes feel impossibly recent, even idyllic compared to what you've got today. But like an old TV show that's mostly held up well, the illusion
Listen, you like the
crumbles
AOL thing, so I
when
had to. Oh,
technology
yeah,
comes
I
into
love
the picture.
stupid weird phone. I love
I'm
weird
Michael
phones.
Fisher, and 10 years ago, the phone housed in my holster was the HTC Mogul. This is the Mr. Mobile Retro
Oh, it
Review,
runs Windows.
brought to you by
Windows
Adblock Browser.
PE Pocket Edition. Like listen, like Alma history time. Basically when I first got my own first cell phone, I got into like this really big thing about like looking at the hottest cell phones and smartphones and seeing what they could do because I thought they were really cool because like they were, you know, they were basically turning into the computers that we know of today. So like I was into computers and the idea of having like having a tiny thing that could do all these computer stuff in your pocket was super interesting to me. So I looked for so I searched around and found all the features and all the neat stuff about them. So like this is kind of like, this was like my shit because I really liked how pre-iPhone designs were because anyone could do whatever the fuck they wanted. Before Apple came along and made like a prevailing design that everyone else basically copied off of to this day. So this is when phones were cool. This is when phones were weird looking and this is like when everything was weird looking because it was the early 2000s and no one knew what the future looked like.
It was in fact one of the last phones of its kind. Behind the aspirational names the carriers and marketers gave it, Mogul, Titan, this was the PPC 6800. An iteration on an idea that had been around a while. In an era when 4 out of 5 Americans were still buying dumb phones, this was a pocket PC, and it lived up to its personal computer namesake, for better or worse. Donning my rose-tinted glasses for a moment, I still remember the smug satisfaction I got from loading full websites on this thing, at a time when commercials had convinced many that the only phone capable of such things had an Apple logo. And the contrarian in me appreciated how the Mogul bucked
also,
the minimalist trend
keyboard,
that was just then
real
taking
good.
hold. In 2018,
Full
you're lucky to get a
keyboards for
dedicated camera
Pog.
key on your phones.
Yeah, no, they're Pog.
In 2008, this thing had 19 hardware buttons on its
Oh, wait,
case,
just review
not
it.
counting the pop-out keyboards. You turned on Wi-Fi with a switch.
Ooh, yay!
There was a jog
Also, this
dial for
thing
BlackBerry
is just
converts,
this
a
thing
D-pad
just is
for
like a
dumb phone
PC.
expats, a touchscreen for everyone else, and a stylus to hit the tiny targets on it. That display was
My review
resistive,
is bad.
super
Okay,
scratch-prone,
fair.
and less than 3 inches across. But I guess with double status LEDs, who needs a screen, right?
Yo, look at all the...
Just like a PC of the time,
Oh my
there was
God.
plenty of I/O, mini USB, transflash, and an IR port that today is almost as rare as the removable battery.
There's so much shit in there.
I got to know that battery pretty well because I frequently had to swap it for a fresh one. Endurance was not great, and since there was no fast charging to speak of, carrying a spare was wise. Considering the retail price of this thing at the time, that was a big disappointment. And for all the capability of
expensive.
Windows Mobile, it was effectively 8 years old when this phone launched, with parts of its codebase dating all the way back to Windows CE in 1996. Yeah, it was powerful, but its instability and a very sluggish interface made it hard for me to avoid the siren song of the iPhone 3G, launched in July of 2008. That phone is the one I left the mogul for, and I was hardly alone. By the end of 2009, Microsoft had lost almost a third of its smartphone market share.
And then they
while
tried
Apple's
again,
grew by
and then
32%.
fell on their face
I ended
again.
up leaving the iPhone pretty quickly, but not so I could return to Windows Mobile. By then, Palm's WebOS, Google's Android, and Microsoft's own Windows Phone 7
There's
series were
Windows
so
Phone
much
7.
more usable than the old Windows Mobile that returning just wasn't in the cards.
Windows Phone 7 was so cool.
I do have fond
design-wise.
memories
I
of
liked
the Mogul. Its GPS navigated me from Virginia to Boston to start my first career out of college. Its big keyboard kept me in touch with the friends I left behind. And its 2-megapixel camera documented the
Rip
transition.
LG Mobile. Rip.
Well,
yeah.
as best it could. But remember, nostalgia is an unreliable narrator. I was active on Howard forums at the time, and here's what I had to say about the Mogul shortly after leaving it in 2008. It could do everything, but it could do nothing well. Crashed all the time, and I had to soft reset it at least once a day to keep the damn thing working. GPS wouldn't get a fix, OS was ugly, laggy, prone to memory leaks. What a disaster of a phone. Man, nothing like a first-hand account from past you to slap you out of that sentimental haze, huh? So I don't
It
mourn
had like
the
a little
Mogul as I do
stylus.
devices like the Palm Pre that died before their time. And I'm really not sorry that the iPhone's debut hastened the demise of Windows Mobile, because it made room for so many better things.
Okay, at least
I
his
don't
hair
much like
isn't
ending on a cliche, but this video seems to need it.
Well,
some things should indeed stay in the past. Things that also belong in the past.
That's
terrible.
Ignoring the sponsor. But like, I don't know. I always wanted one of them, but I never actually had a need for him. Other than, I don't know, like posting stuff on Twitter because I was still addicted then. Still am. You know. Anyway. Let's look
a first of its kind.
Let's look at this funky boy.
A first-of-its-kind circular
This was also
screen,
2008.
a stainless steel casing that took 2 weeks to etch, and a Swiss-inspired mechanism that ensures it opens just as smoothly in 2020
that
as
looks
it did in
fucking dope.
2008. I'm Mr. Mobile, and this is the Motorola Aura, a rare artifact from back in the days when
It looks
phones
so
were
good. It still looks good. It looks like a sci-fi. Well, no, it looks like a Men in Black phone or something.
Now, despite the fact that it
it's
comes
so
from the
cool.
same 4-letter lineage as the Pebble, Sliver, Rocker, and of course Razor, you probably don't remember the Motorola Aura.
Oh,
and there's
that's
a good
why
reason for
they
that.
were all 4 letters?
First of all, it debuted
Okay.
at the staggering price of $2,000 US, or nearly $2,400 adjusted for inflation.
Well, fuck.
On top of that, its launch in October
Cool.
2008 was perfectly, terribly timed with the subprime mortgage crisis that kicked off the Great Recession.
Oh, okay.
Launching high-end specialty phones into a market crippled by an economic crisis? Boy, I sure am glad Motorola's luck has changed. Oh boy. Now, the reason this pricey indulgence is
It
worth
looks
a look to me
so
is
cool.
because it's the closest the mobile world has gotten to an heirloom product. Look at the phones I was carrying when the Aura launched. An
Yeah.
iPhone 3G and a Motorola Renegade. Sorry,
Chunky
you have to say
boy.
it like that. It's the law.
Chunky boy.
Each of those, while great in its own way, was also made of the utilitarian stuff of 2008. Plastic, rubber, and the Aura bucked those trends. Take the housing.
Ooh.
Instead of plastic, stainless steel with a PVD coating that's been chemically etched in a process that Motorola says took 2 weeks. The keypad, aluminum with a spin finish moire that recalls the Razor. And this display. It's not just that it's the first circular TFT LCD on a mobile phone. This thing had an effective resolution of 300 DPI, which was unheard of at the time. It would be
it's
another
so
2
clear,
to 4 years
honestly.
before screens of this sharpness became the norm.
Oh, it's such...
Just look at how beautiful this Apollo 11 medallion is. A very intentional out-of-box choice, by the way, which I'll explain in a minute. And what I love most about the Aura is that it doesn't stop at high-end features. It always sticks a flourish on top. This, for example, this is not glass. It's 62 karat sapphire crystal, very difficult to scratch, and it's not a flat plate, but domed. That means light refracts as it passes through, bending at the borders, making the display look even more like a physical
It almost
object.
looks like a retro
Even when it's off,
futuristic
this
thing
It's just
still.
fun to move around in your hand.
Oh my goodness.
Look at.
I can respect the
That sapphire was
craftsmanship
inspired by
on
the
this
world
type
of
of
the
thing.
high-end timepiece, an analogy which continues around back. Take a peek through this window, as you might on a pocket watch with a skeleton dial, and you'll find a mechanism just as you would on a pocket watch. An honest-to-goodness Swiss-made bearing with over 200 pieces and hardened steel gears coated in tungsten carbide. An over-engineered way to open a phone? Yeah, absolutely. But as I said in the intro, it works just as well now as it did 12 years ago. And it's absolutely addictive. As Motorola seemed to forecast in its user
It's so
manual.
slick. This phone is so
Repeatedly
extra.
opening and closing the blade can inadvertently answer and end a call.
Basically telling you not to mess with it. We know it's fun. Don't play with it too much.
Meanwhile, Motorola's released stuff where
It's a
if you
fidget spinner
open the hinge and close it,
for
you might
rich
just
people.
break the phone forever. But dang,
Now, despite the
it's so
heirloom
extra. I
potential of
love
this
it.
hardware, the biggest reason
Step
technology
aside,
doesn't
fidget
get
spinners.
passed
I got a
down through the
$2,000
generations is that it
phone that
ages
can't
too
access
quickly,
the internet.
right? You know, just take the camera. Framing shots through a circular
Okay, this is
viewfinder
just cute.
is fun, if difficult.
It probably
And the
looks like
sensor is
ass,
cleverly
though,
mounted
but, you know, whatever.
horizontally, so you can hold the phone upright and still get a landscape photo.
Oh, okay.
That's a trick Motorola would bring back for some of its 2019 smartphones. But the fixed focus 2-megapixel camera doesn't hold up. And hey, remember when you had to tell the phone that you wanted to save that photo you just took? Otherwise, it would go ahead and delete it for you? Yeah, good times. In my opinion, Motorola wouldn't get a handle on good software design until the Moto X 5 years after this.
Okay, but that
So
thing
you have
ran
this
Android.
slow, unintuitive interface that you have to navigate with these tiny
It
buttons.
looks...
Even back in 2008, companies were already shipping scroll wheels on phones, Motorola included. So it's weird to me that the Aura, which lavishes so much attention on
Imagine
its
if
circular
this
screen,
thing had a
makes
touch
you muddle
screen.
through with this D-pad for
Or
apps.
what if it had like a
In most
scroll
parts of the
wheel or
software,
something?
The circular motif just gets ignored.
That would make this
Apps
so
are square. The menus are just
so
lists
cool.
of text. Really, just a lot of missed opportunities here. Folks, I did try to get the Aura working so I could make a phone call. I got a SIM adapter
The
kit
future
from
is
Amazon
round.
because back in 2008, SIMs were actually physically larger, and I charged the phone up until its embedded ring light glowed a steady green. But try as I might, I could not get the phone to see the T-Mobile network. Not that this 2G phone would be terribly useful for much longer. Eventually, even the storied GSM
Yeah,
technology it depends upon will be sunset in favor of more modern networks.
Yeah, isn't 2G like sunsetting soon?
And that's why you don't see many companies making the effort to build phones as exquisite as this one.
It
Sure,
almost
you
looks like
had
a
Nokia's
smartwatch.
Vertu handsets.
Yeah.
And the Aura also recalls the novel Runcible handset from Monome.
I remember that
But
one.
Vertu got spun off and then went bankrupt. And Monome claims it's still working on the Runcible, but it's 4 years overdue despite the fact that they have thousands of dollars from gullible rubes like me.
I like it. It's a round. It's
The point,
literally a round
besides,
boy.
You should be careful.
I
which
love the
ego
round
goes
boy.
back. Technology just moves too quickly for anyone but the super rich to drop this kind of money on a fashion piece. That said, the Aura wasn't the failure you might expect. It spawned several variations through 2009.
Does it come in
some with
multiple
diamonds,
colors?
some gold-plated, and this one, the Celestial Edition.
Ooh.
Yeah, Motorola built this to commemorate the 40th anniversary of the moon landing, which the company had actually helped with back in 1969 as a communications vendor. So this variant of the Aura came with
Space.
custom wallpapers and ringtones. And reportedly, one was actually given to Neil Armstrong as a gift. I don't think it was engraved Steely-Eyed Missile Man, but I hope it was. The Aura is an interesting contrast
Oh, and there's the
to
Matrix
last
phone.
I featured in this series.
Yeah, there's the
Samsung's
Matrix phone.
which felt cheaper than it looked. The Aura is kind of the opposite. It feels even more
I
expensive.
just really
than
want a
it looks.
pocket watch.
Maybe
Oh,
that's
man.
the reason it hasn't.
Jill, you're like living
depreciated
my
in value
fantasies
that much
years
since
ago.
Release, another rare achievement. We don't yet have a pocket watch of phones or an heirloom of mobiles, but once upon a time we sure got close. Back in the days when phones were fun.
It's such a good-looking
Special thanks to
phone.
Motorola for loaning this handset for this video. And
They
sorry,
got
friends,
it
it's
straight
not for
from
sale. In fact,
Motorola?
it'll
Oh,
shortly
shit.
be on a truck back to Chicago.
Wow.
As usual, of course, Motorola got no copy approval or early...
I'm like, yeah, if it's like, it's so close to being good because, like, the icons are in a round orientation, like, it's, you know, you're embracing the fact that the screen's round, and then you get this really shitty square UI. Yeah, no, Jill, when I was younger, I really like pocket watches and stuff. I think I might have one, but it's, like, definitely not, like, the best thing. It's probably broken. But, like, I thought they were cool. You know, get, like, a pocket watch chain. Yeah, I used to be one of those people. I used to be one of those people. Well, but then again, that was, like, early 2000s, so, you know, I think that was, like, the style that everyone was going for to begin with. So, judge me all you want, I guess. Let's look at more phones. Let's look at more phones. I like looking. I have a pocket watch, but it hasn't worked for days. The insides are shiny. Yeah, it stinks that they're so hard to, like, repair. Even if they are ridiculously, like, if they're, you know, tiny and complicated. Can I blame Doctor Who? Oh, you watched that up? David Tennant was your doctor? I see. I see and understand. No, you can blame it. It's fine.
Star Trek Discovery,
anyway.
Minority Report to The Expanse. If there's one thing science fiction agrees on, it's that our future will be run on transparent displays. So imagine my surprise when I learned that a clear-screened cell phone was not only just an eBay away, but also from 10 years in the past.
No, it was Peter Eccleston. Okay.
iPhone 3GS, Motorola Droid.
Motorola Droid.
The smartphone world of 2019
I love the Droid.
Was a calamitous maelstrom of upheaval.
Let's go back. I saw one that made me laugh.
3GS, Motorola Droid, Palm Pre.
Here's the Palm.
The smartphone world of
but yeah, no, that's still the Palm. I thought for a second it was a Motorola Kin. Do you guys remember the Motorola Kin? It was on sale for like 90 days.
2019 was a calamitous maelstrom. But
it was terrible.
Excitement, the number of Americans who actually carried a smartphone was still less than a third of the U.S. population. So there was still plenty of money to be made for those companies still playing in the dumb phone,
Microsoft Kin, yeah,
feature phone space.
That's my government-assigned Kin is the Microsoft
a strategic
Kin.
Partnership that would produce
or the Kin 2.
Most distinctive devices. To propel that reputation into the new decade, Sony Ericsson decided to target the same market as Motorola did with its Aura design the year prior.
I'll get a video about
people whose
the
desire
Motorola
to
Kin up.
stand out burned just as brightly as the cash burning a hole in
that
their
looks
pocket.
so
On its US
extra.
release, Sony Ericsson's Xperia Pureness cost a Hamilton shy of $1,000.
Where are the buttons?
And right out of the box, it wasn't clear what you were paying for. Unlike the
What?
Aura with its painstakingly etched steel casing, or Nokia's Virtu phones with their gem-studded leather backs, the Pureness comes out of the box and it's just another creaky plastic candy bar.
It looks kind of
The glossy
bad,
finish
honestly.
feels cheap and prone to skin oil smudges, like a Happy Meal toy. There's no GPS, there's
They're
no memory
backlit
card
buttons.
slot, there's
Oh,
not
I
even
see.
a camera. Chris Hall at PocketLint
I
said
can
it had a
barely
feature
see
list
it as
from
is.
10
Yeah,
years
it
ago.
looks so weird.
And he wrote that 10 years ago. But all that fades away like frost on a warming car windshield when you power up the Pureness. There's no color to the 1.8-inch display, but it doesn't matter in the slightest because there's also no back to it. The interface just floats in space, suspended in this frame, glowing a futuristic white to match the backlighting under the keys.
Okay, that looks nice.
It looks kind of like an ice sculpture.
Although, it must be complete ass to try and see. Unless the backlighting
And
was
yes, turn the phone around and you can see the display in reverse.
Ooh.
It makes sense, right? It shouldn't be surprising, but it is. It's a bit like Google Glass, RIP, or Focals by North, also RIP, in that it almost looks like a heads-up display. When the Pureness debuted, Slashgear's Chris Davies suggested that this would be a great phone for augmented reality. You're a true man
He
of
tried.
the future, Chris. I'm sorry the world hasn't caught up with you yet.
He tried. That was an idea.
Now, you weren't just paying for the display. Like Vertu, Sony Ericsson was keenly aware that the kind of person who had $990 to drop on a dumb phone, well, that's probably the same kind of person who'd use a concierge to book travel, make dinner reservations, or deal with, quote, all manner of lifestyle-related requests, as long as they are deemed to be legal and moral. Talk about casting a wide net.
That's right. I want the original vinyl pressing of Brent Spiner's Old Yellow Eyes is back, and I want it by 4 p.m. Rich guys.
So yeah, when you purchased the Pureness, you got a year of said legal and moral assistance from a firm called Quintessentially.
Moral assistance?
Incidentally, Quintessentially is still in business today. In 2017, it arranged for the Sydney Harbor Bridge to be closed so one of its members could propose to his fiancée.
Rich guys.
Back in 2009, the membership tier that came with the Pureness actually cost about as much as the phone itself, and you were getting it for free. And if that didn't do it for you, well, maybe the age-old minimalist pitch would.
Why?
We wanted to create a movement that drives it towards purity, simplicity. We wanted to renew the preciousness of simplicity.
I sometimes think the true test of a designer's mettle is...
I don't believe anybody who says that, especially if someone who very almost clearly looks Filipino, and this is coming from someone who is Filipino. I don't trust you. It sounds like you're bullshitting.
How well they can vamp in a warehouse interview with a cameraman intentionally drifting in and out of focus. I'm sorry, it's just a really 2009 video. And I don't mean to lampoon these designers at all. In many ways, the Pureness does accomplish its aim of manifesting a minimalist intent. It's very restrained, it's very intentional. And with the exception of the cheap plastic, it's executed fairly well too. From the matching chamfers across display and chassis, to the clever one per side volume up and down keys.
Okay,
I really like
that's
those.
smart.
It's just that what manufacturers of minimalist phones are usually doing is shipping a significantly less capable device at a significant markup. And all the while just peppering in these platitudes that don't really mean much. So what's it like to actually use the thing? Well, in a refreshing change of pace, this phone actually registered on T-Mobile's Edge network here in Brooklyn. Once I found a SIM adapter of the right size to convert my modern-day nano SIM into 2009's standard size footprint.
Hey, all right.
And remember how much I complained about the cramped keypad on the Motorola Aura? Well, it only took me a few minutes on the Pureness to beg to be back on that phone. These keys are horribly cramped, with poor travel and, more often than not, a creak with each click.
Wait, this D-pad, dude.
On top of that, like all Sony Ericsson chargers, I remember this one attaches with the timidity and hesitation of a kindergartner on the first day of school.
What the?
And as cool as the display looks, and it really does feel futuristic, even today, it's almost totally useless in direct sunlight. Or on a white table. Or really in any situation that's not a moodily lit casino in the middle of the night in Montenegro. Yeah, that's a Casino Royale joke. Bond and Sony Ericsson went hand in hand for a while. Maybe we'll get to it in a future video. Don't worry about it. By virtue of its era, though, the Pureness did pack a couple cool capabilities. Plug in the included headset, and the wire acts as an antenna to pick up FM radio broadcasts.
Well, that's just kind of how they work anyway, right? Right? Like, headphones can function as a FM antenna?
Sony phones shipped with an app called Track ID that could identify songs that were playing on that radio. It's kind of like an FM version of Shazam. Sadly, Sony shuttered Track ID almost 3 years ago. So, like your drunken missive to an ex in the middle of the night, your music query will be waiting for response forever. I wish I could say the prospects looked better for a resurrection of the Xperia Pureness, but they don't. There doesn't seem to be any mobile manufacturer contemplating including clear screens in the near future. And who can blame them, right? I mean, while it's novel to browse the web on a heads-up display, the limitations far outweigh the benefits. And that also seemed to be Sony and Ericsson's ultimate reasoning concerning their alliance. In 2012, after over 10 years producing phones together, the companies went their separate ways, with Sony spending $1.5 billion to take ownership of Ericsson's side of the business so it could focus on smartphones.
I actually didn't know that.
That's a battle Sony is still fighting under the Xperia brand to this day. And you can see the results of its efforts as recently as this month in my review of the company's Xperia 1 Mark II. As for Sony Ericsson and the Xperia Pureness, well, Not only are they precious mementos from a time when phones were fun, but I tend to believe that they'll always be a part of us. Like air.
It's so weird. It's so weird.
Thanks to all the people who suggested this phone, which I got for
It's
a
a
pretty
Swedish
penny on eBay.
telecom
Over
company.
$400
Huh.
more than a decade after production. Yowie. As always, the manufacturer had nothing to do with this video.
$400?
No compensation or copy approval, none
My
of that.
goodness.
In between my regular reviews, I'm just making videos about...
Like, this idea can come back today, like, but we already have other screen technologies that are better in this type of environment, like e-ink. Like, those are pretty good. Or transflexive displays, which are already great. So it's kind of hard to like bring this concept back, even though we do sell like black and white, like LCDs and stuff, or black and white OLEDs or whatever. Ooh! We're going different. We're gonna be that dude in the ad start at the film like he ate the last of the lasagna. Okay, we're gonna be talking about like the best phone before the iPhone. It's the fucking Motorola Sidekick.
It was a time when cell phones looked like this, and laptops looked like this.
Motorola Sidekick.
If you wanted to bridge the gap between them but weren't corporate enough to have your own BlackBerry Enterprise
If you were a
server, well,
teenager.
then you got one of these.
Look at it.
I'm Michael Fisher, and this is the T-Mobile Sidekick. Let's find out what made it a go-to back in the days when phones were fun.
I love this. I wish I had one. I really did, but they were so fucking cool.
Well, let's kick this off with a fun fact. The name Sidekick,
Like
under which this device became famous, was
the
actually a
gesture is
brand
so
cooked up by
damn
carrier
cool.
launch partner T-Mobile.
Oh, God.
The name given it by its designers, a little Palo Alto-based outfit called Danger, with some familiar names in its credits, was the more playful Hip Top.
Now, this was one of those rare cases when both brand names were actually pretty great. I mean, it was a hip top because it was a laptop you wore on your hip, and it was a sidekick too, because once you got used to having it around, you'd never wanted to leave the house without it.
Hey, whatever you called it, this device was ahead of its time in many ways. And to fully appreciate what that time was, you need to remember that this first model for 2002 didn't even have a color screen.
Man, opening that
the
thing
one I
is
have here
so
is the
just
revised edition
great
with
looking.
a transflective color panel up front. And around back, what at first looks like Sharpie graffiti is in fact autographs from the Danger team that designed it.
Ooh.
I have Dez from T-Mobile to thank for loaning all these vintage units to make this video possible. If you're not following him already, you should. He makes incredible unboxings. So yeah, in an era when your choice was between a simple numeric dumb phone or a big business BlackBerry or Trio, the Sidekick was something completely different. Because it was designed to be used in landscape with both hands, it looked like a portable game console. And
It's
to be
hip
fair,
for
Rockin'
teens.
Rocket was a great take on Asteroid. But the Sidekick's raison d'etre was not gaming, it was messaging. A gentle press on a corner of the screen caused it to swing around on a hinge, exposing a huge 5-row keyboard. Everyone rightly praises
hinge was
BlackBerry
so
for its amazing
cool.
physical keyboards over the years, but Sidekick doesn't get enough
I
credit.
miss it.
This thing is incredibly comfortable, and it's where you'd crank
I
out
miss
your
it
emails,
so
text
much.
messages, and yes, AOL IMs. Instant messaging was still massive at this time. I remember getting a BlackBerry years after the Sidekick debuted and being floored that I had to download a third-party app just to get instant messaging to work, kinda. If there was a killer app for Sidekicks, messaging was it. So maybe it's no surprise that the device was also a mainstay of the deaf community for years. The thing about that first Sidekick was, well, I mean, I kept calling it a meatball when I first unboxed it. Just look at it.
What a meatball this thing was.
It barely fit in a pocket. When you had to make a call, it was very uncomfortable to talk on. The only available camera was an attachment, and the user interface just wasn't quite there yet. For example, when you closed the screen, you still had the scroll wheel, but you lost the D-pad.
These are problems Danger would go on to solve with the Sidekick 2. And while many sequels would follow afterward, in many ways, I don't think the Sidekick ever got better than this.
The Sidekick 2 was longer but thinner than the first one, which made it more pocket-friendly, and phone calls were promoted from afterthought to legitimate feature by centering the earpiece behind the D-pad, now more sensibly placed alongside the display rather than beneath it. The Sidekick 2 also established the external button template that would persist for the next 6 years. Power and volume down below, 2 shoulder buttons up top, and back menu jump and cancel dotting the corners.
When cell
and
phones
plus
had
you've got the
shoulder
scroll wheel and
buttons.
phone buttons on the
Ooh.
right. I know it sounds like a lot, but as Chris DeSalvo points out in his fantastic retrospective about working at Danger, this bounty of buttons meant you could do a lot with the device just by feel. Try that on any phone made since 2011. Under the screen, the keys got bigger and more densely packed under a single-piece rubber mat, and the result was a thumbboard that still, to this day, ranks among my absolute favorites.
And then, like,
Just
the
listen to
opening
these
mechanism
clicky contacts.
just is like ASMR to me. Like, it's so slick. I wish phones still had that.
Besides its
But
technical
people kept
accomplishments,
dropping them. And
the Sidekick
it's
2 was
their
also one of the
fault
first
for
mobiles to
breaking them.
really leverage the power of celebrity and design collaborations. So you had custom editions from Mr. Cartoon and Juicy Couture popping up in commercials, music videos,
Ooh.
and in the hands of people like...
Pink.
Yes, indeed. Paris Hilton. Her infamous Sidekick 2 hack in February of 2005 exposed one of the biggest vulnerabilities of the platform.
I asked people in 2020 what they remember about the Paris Hilton Sidekick leak, and they'll probably say, well, the more prurient details, the racy photos, whatever. But a lot of people don't remember that her entire contact list was released as well. So I remember following this story in my college library. I was in school at the time, and I clicked a link from a news story, and suddenly I'm looking at a spreadsheet with literally Bruce Willis's phone number and Nicole Richie's phone number. And of course, by the time the news broke, everyone knew and nobody was answering their phones. Not that I would know, I didn't call any of them, but I could have. And I remember thinking that was very strange and weird, and wow, it's odd to live in the future.
Now, what's interesting is that vulnerability derived from one of the Sidekick's biggest strengths.
Getting doxxed.
See, back in the mid-aughts, when you bought a new phone and wanted to move your information from your old one to your new one, most times the best you could hope for was that your carrier would copy your phone book, and maybe your pictures, with something called a Celebrite machine. I used to use one of these when I worked at Sprint.
What the fuck are you?
But with a Sidekick, all your user data was on Danger's servers, so you could just buy a new one, put in your password, and boom, everything comes back.
Oh,
It's
so it had
basically iCloud
syncing. Oh, that's
years
dope.
before the iPhone was
cool.
even a thing. David Kogan at The Unlocker talks more about that in
That's
his own
such a
Sidekick
cool
video,
idea.
which I'll link below. And that's a Sidekick 3 in his hand, a.k.a.
Hold on, I keep hearing like an echo in my voice, and I don't know where it's coming from. What? Oh no. Okay. I think it's something in my room. I don't know.
The last truly great Sidekick. And I'm not just saying that because it's the one I owned. The 3 brought Bluetooth and expandable storage, along with a user-replaceable battery and a new keyboard design, meant to solve the problem with the Sidekick 2's rubber mat peeling off, which I guess happened a lot. Oh, and who could forget the most excellent included leather belt case, right?
Oh, also, like, the
Don't
trackball
act like
was
this
dope.
isn't sexy. I know it is.
It's so good.
As you can see, the design
Danger
collaborations
server
continued as well.
marketing needs to work on
Des
that
sent
one.
me 2 of them. This one that looks like a TurtleCom is a co-brand with clothing label Lifted Research Group, and this one is the Dwayne Wade edition.
It looks like the
released in
weed
conjunction with the
themed Sidekick,
NBA
to be
All-Star
honest.
Game of February
But okay.
2007. Only the Dwayne Wade has the fun basketball finish on the battery door.
Oh, that's cute.
But both of these relics are today suffering from an unfortunate but unavoidable chemical process.
Oh, it's rubbering. No, don't tell me. Is it
I
rubber?
explained this in a video about my first ever cell phone a while back, so allow myself to quote myself. You've probably noticed how gross this flip is.
No,
that's not
it's
something
the
to blame on
rubber.
Some Googling led me to a site called Polymer Solutions, which explains that this is an example of something called rubber reversion. Basically, before Samsung molded this earpiece into a comfortable soft-touch material, it started out life as a liquid petroleum product, and it's gotten so old that it's now behaving more like a latex, slowly reverting back to its liquid state, like Odo after too long away from his bucket.
And on a personal note, the Sidekick was also an opportunity for me to sort of declare my independence from Sprint, the company that had employed me while I was studying acting. And I remember it was 2006, the money was starting to come in from the commercials and training videos that I had done, and I had just booked a gig doing books on tape for law students, the job that would eventually bring me to Boston. And so I felt I was secure enough to do this. So I put in my notice, activated my last batch of Nextel phones or whatever, and then I literally walked across the mall concourse, basically across the hall in this mall, to the T-Mobile store, and picked myself up a Sidekick 3.
Oh.
During the 9 months I owned it, I took some of the truly dreadful photos you're seeing here.
Oh, there's so much grain
Yeah,
in
these
that.
are original from the Sidekick 3's
Ooh.
1.3 megapixel camera circa 2007, including my first ever Facebook profile picture. He would hate that I'm calling him an emo bro, but I'm doing it.
This honestly looks like
Anyway, when I
if-
wasn't taking selfies, I
it
was
looks
learning
good,
the ups
though.
and downs
It
of the
looks good.
Sidekick software. I loved how you never had to wait for it. It was always responsive, even though apps always stayed running in the background. And even though those apps could talk to each other. This was all a big deal at the time. I enjoyed little
do you think
touches
of
like
his
custom fonts and
Are you asking
full-page
Jill
scrolling
to
with
just
key
review his
combinations.
hair every time?
It was quite novel having a first-party app store right on the device, long before the iPhone would do the same. But you know, after a while, the comic book-like design started to wear thin. I remember thinking every time I scrolled to the dialer, who are these people?
Also,
And why does my phone sound
oh
like
god,
a broken Rube
the
Goldberg machine when I'm
resolution.
just clicking through the
Wait,
interface?
go back.
Myself up.
There, that's his hair. Jill, give us your opinion on his hair. Since you're so vehemently, you have strong opinions about his hair. No, the old photo. Okay. There's the old hair. Found it. Okay, so what do you think of this? What do you think of his hair now? What do you think? Oh. Okay. Also, as a side note, I think I figured out what was the thing that was echoing in my voice. I have an open water bottle here, so if I talk loud enough, it better than Kurt. If I talk loud enough, it reverberates and it sounds like an echo in me, in my room, because of my water bottle. So that's fine. I'll close it now so I don't keep hearing it. Jill, I'll go to you for fashion advice.
He would hate that I'm calling him
Jill's
an emo
very
bro, but
fashionable.
I'm doing it.
My wife
Anyway,
is
when
very
I wasn't
fashionable.
taking selfies, I was learning the ups and downs of the Sidekick software. I loved how you never had to wait for it. It was always responsive, even though apps always stayed running in
This
the
thing
background.
basically had
And even
everything
though
before the
those apps
iPhone
could
did.
talk to
So
each
what
other,
happened?
This was all a big deal at the time. I enjoyed little touches like the custom
My dad
fonts
imported
and
a Sidekick
full-page
4G.
scrolling with key
Ooh.
combinations. It was quite novel having a first-party app store right on the device, long before the iPhone would do the
Like,
same.
it has an app store.
But you know, after a while,
What happened?
the
Why did
comic book-like design
people
started
not
to
want
wear thin.
these?
I remember thinking
and
every time
got
I
an
scrolled to the
iPhone?
dialer, who are these people? And why does my phone sound like a broken Rube Goldberg machine when I'm just clicking through the interface?
That's a lot of
Yeah, the
noises.
Sidekick did stumble on some of the fundamentals, too. Battery life was just bad. I mean, it was so reliant on always keeping a connection to a server. Even if you powered it off, it would still drain overnight. So if you didn't have your charger, you'd wake up to a dead device that would take hours to top up.
Oh, that's
No such
dumb.
thing as fast charging in the mid-aughts. As the
Oh, I had
web
a
became
barrel
more complex,
charger,
the slower
ew.
data speeds on the Sidekick 3 started to be felt more keenly, and the screen, though very readable, even in direct sunlight, just couldn't hold a candle to the high-resolution panels that the competition
It looks
was
like a
starting to
juice
bring.
box resolution or something.
Plenty of Sidekicks came out after the 3, but as you can maybe tell, the design had already peaked. Perhaps feeling the strain of its never-great financial situation, Danger and manufacturer Sharp started compromising even as they broadened the catalog. The Sidekick ID was a cheaper and uglier version of the 3, while the Sidekick LX of 2008 switched to cheap glossy plastic and a fake leather backplate that wasn't fooling anyone, even back then. The screen was better, and there were fun sidelights for custom alert patterns, but the lower quality fit and finish and less satisfying keyboard
looks like a
were,
PSP.
well, less fun. And the compromises only compounded with the even cheaper feeling Sidekick 2008 and the utter disaster that was the Sidekick Slide. Yeah, with this boring slider mechanism in place of the iconic swivel and a much smaller, squarer display, this thing looks less like a Sidekick than one of the generic messaging phones that was so common at the time. But you'd be lucky to get through a single email on
Yeah,
this
these all look like a
flat,
PSP.
static, crowded mess of a keyboard. Ugh.
Ew, boo.
More devices came, but things never got much better for the Sidekick. The combination of a changing competitive landscape, the ever more apparent quality compromises, and yet another high-profile data loss just kept eating away at the brand. Microsoft would purchase the money-losing Danger in February 2008, which didn't end up being great news for the million or so Sidekick users of the time. It turned out Microsoft was less interested in continuing the Sidekick legacy than kickstarting its own. The platform was discontinued, the servers eventually turned off, while Microsoft used Danger's purloined expertise to launch the Kin, a product for which the word failure is too generous. But that's another story.
Microsoft Kin, let's
It's an
go!
ignominious end for a product once synonymous with hip and, yes, hot. But the legacy of the Sidekick lives on even today. In on-device app stores, in server-side
I've been
backups,
talking
they're
enough about the
thankfully
I
much
feel
more
like we need to
reliable
talk
nowadays.
about the Microsoft Kin, and I'm gonna get a
rose-tinted
video
memories of the
for
time
it.
when screens flipped out, IMs were everything.
The Kin killed the
and
Sidekick?
phones
No, the Kin
were
killed
fun.
itself. What are you talking about? Hold on. We gotta talk about this thing. Because I feel like this is a joke that I only get, and I need to tell you guys about this stupid damn thing. Okay, so. The Microsoft Kin. Let me find, like... Okay, yeah. Let's just do Michael's video. The 48-day smartphone fiasco.
Microsoft is no...
By the way, I wanted one of these damn things because it looked cool. I'm gonna buy a retro Microsoft Kin so I can leave it to my ex's wife in the way. I saw one of them. I saw them a long time ago when I was working. They didn't work, but they were really funny just to see.
Microsoft is no stranger to the world of mobile devices.
I thought
Over the years, the company has developed mobile operating systems to run on multiple different types of hardware. There was the WinPad project in 1992 that later inspired the creation of Windows CE, and there was Windows Mobile in the early 2000s that later evolved into Windows Phone. And as I'm sure most of us know, Microsoft had a version of Windows 10 that ran on smartphones, but support for it ended earlier this year.
I also wanted an
Now, all of
N-Gage.
these products had their ups and downs, and the announcement of the Surface Duo last year marks a major shift in Microsoft's mobile strategy by creating a phone that runs Android. You've probably heard of all of these products.
I have a friend who
maybe
has
you
a
were a
Duo,
Windows Mobile user back years ago, or maybe you're anxiously awaiting the launch of the Surface Duo later this year. But today I want to talk about a lesser known line of mobile phones. One that never saw massive success, and is only remembered today as a small footnote. That product is the Microsoft Kin. And today we're going to be talking about how its 48-day existence led to one of the biggest failures in the history of Microsoft.
I can hear it.
The origins of the Microsoft Kin can be traced back to
go.
another smartphone, the much more successful Danger Hip-Top. This phone
see?
was originally released back in 2002 and was sold by T-Mobile,
I
who
can the
branded it
Microsoft
the
Kin.
T-Mobile Sidekick. Danger was a company started by a few former Apple employees. One of them was Andy Rubin, who would later co-found Android Incorporated, which would be acquired by Google in 2005. Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak even served on the company's board of directors. The Sidekick was a huge success in the US and is considered to be one of the very first smartphones. It featured support for email, had a web browser, and could even send instant messages through AIM.
Honestly,
flip-out QWERTY keyboard
learning
made
about
typing
like
on it
its
very doable.
founders
The Sidekick also
is
featured
feels like
contact and calendar syncing, a
I don't know,
very
feels like a
revolutionary feature for the time. This meant that if you purchased a new Sidekick model,
sign of things to
all you
come
had
in
to
the
do
future.
was sign into your account on the device, and all of your user data was downloaded to your new phone. Now this was unheard of at the time, as generally if you purchased a new cell phone, your carrier would have to transfer your data for you. But if you were a Sidekick user in the mid-2000s, you probably remember an infamous hacking incident that was revealed in 2005. By exploiting a vulnerability in T-Mobile's servers, a hacker was able to gain access to customer data, including Paris Hilton's contact list that was later leaked online, and even emails from a Secret Service agent. But that is a story for a future video.
Okay.
There were multiple models of the Sidekick released throughout the 2000s, and Danger maintained a set of online services for the devices, including an app store, where you could download additional applications to the Sidekick. This expertise was extremely valuable to Microsoft when they acquired the company in 2008 for $500 million, eventually merging the development staff into the Entertainment and Devices division to work on a new project known as Project Pink, which began development earlier that year. Project Pink was the codename for the Kin line of smartphones. Microsoft knew that danger would be a valuable asset to them in creating the Kin. The company had already created a massively successful line of phones and had experience with cloud computing since they operated many of the online services for the hip-top. The development process took about 2 years, resulting in 2 models of the Kin being released 6 months prior to the launch of Windows Phone 7. The Kin 1 was the smaller of the two, featuring a 2 by 1.5 inch touchscreen and a vertical sliding keyboard. The Kin 2, which is the model that I have here, is the larger device with a horizontal sliding keyboard. It also featured upgraded hardware, sporting an 8 megapixel camera as opposed to the one's 5 megapixel, and had the ability to record video. It also came with 8 gigabytes of storage instead of 4. Just like most of the Danger hip-top phones, both Kin models were manufactured by Sharp. They also featured Windows Phone branding on the back, as it was described by Microsoft as a close cousin to the upcoming OS. However, the phone actually ran a modified version of Windows CE. So what set the Kin apart from other smartphones on the market? Its target audience. The Kin was targeted towards what Microsoft called livecasters, specifically people between the ages of 15 and 30. It was an ambitious concept, being heavily focused on social media, dubbed a social phone by Microsoft. And this is where Danger's expertise in the cloud computing sector really came into play.
There are lots of
Microsoft advertised the phone as being always connected. Its home screen, known as Loop, displays the latest posts from your social media accounts. To the right of that, we have your contacts, and to the left, your applications. There's also this small green circle known as the Kin Spot that is present throughout the entire interface. You can drag things like photos to it to share with your contacts via email. All photos and videos taken on the Kin were automatically uploaded to Kin Studio, a cloud storage service. It was also heavily tied in with the Zune ecosystem. The phone synced data using the Zune desktop application and could even listen to music with a Zune Pass subscription, Microsoft's music streaming service. So why did the Kin only last for 48 days on the market? Well, for one, it didn't sell very well, due to some of the limitations and for the price. Now, the cost of the Kin itself wasn't that bad.
This thing,
the Kin 1 sold for $50 and the 2 for $100. But this was a subsidized price, as you had to sign a 2-year contract with Verizon, who charged the same amount of money for data plans as they did on other smartphones. Now, this doesn't seem unreasonable at first, but the Kin, even though it was considered a smartphone, it did lack certain things that most smartphones have, like a calendar and appointment application, but this was because it was specifically intended for a younger audience. But charging the same amount of money for a data plan didn't really give potential buyers an incentive to purchase the Kin over another smartphone. But this was not the only reason. Despite the Kin being social media centered, it lacked some basic social media functionality like the ability to retweet people and post images to Twitter. It also had no games, no app store, no flash support, and no IM, again something that you would think a phone targeted towards teenagers would have. But all of this was due to
tried to make
much
an extremely
larger problem
online
that plagued
phone,
the Kin from day
and it just
one,
didn't work.
And that was disputes between executives at Microsoft during development,
Oh, there was internal
which
shit.
resulted in
Ooh,
the
let's
Kin
see here.
being released in the state that it was. Ultimately, only 48 days after it was introduced, Microsoft pulled the plug on the entire Kin line and canceled its plans for its launch in the UK. 1 month later, Verizon stopped selling the Kin and sent all of its unsold stock back to Microsoft. It's estimated that only around 9,000 units of the Kin were sold. Not the anticipated outcome for a project that cost Microsoft about $1 billion. But not all was lost.
Now
with
I
the
should
Kin.
have kept the ones that I
Microsoft
found
cleverly
because I
decided
didn't
to
know there were
update
only
the
8,000
firmware on their
in
unsold Kin units to remove many of these social and web-focused
8,000 on
features,
whatever.
including the Kin Spot. Now, while this did
8,000,
remove
like,
much of
items
the
in
phone's
production.
main functionality, It resulted in the Kin 1M and Kin 2M, which were offered for sale in November of 2010. Since the web-focused features were removed, these new Kin models were reclassified as feature phones instead of smartphones, which meant they did not require a data plan. The price also dropped drastically for both models.
To like nothing,
the Kin
right?
1M was now $20 and the 2M $50.
They're like, they're
both on a
basically
2-year
free. Please
contract
take
with
them.
Verizon.
Please take them.
Interestingly enough, though, the Kin didn't lose all of its
Please take
internet-related
them away
features.
from us.
One huge functionality that remained was the ability to use a Zune Pass subscription on the phone. However, the client was modified to only allow streaming over Wi-Fi. And just like the original Kin models, you could sync the M phones with the Zune application on your computer to copy things like music and TV shows. But 2 months after the Kin relaunch, Microsoft shut down Kin.com along with the back-end services that powered the Kin's Loop home screen
And then it just
and
died.
other web-related
And then they
services.
just decided to
This essentially rendered the
destroy
original
it.
Kin models feature phones, just like the 1M and 2M. On top of that, all user data stored on Kin Studio was deleted, but users were notified of this in advance so they could back up any data. So what happened with the 9,000 people who purchased one of the original models? Well, Verizon allowed them to trade in their now not smartphone for a free 3G phone of their choice, although I wasn't able to find any information on if there were any restrictions on this offer. Ironically, the Kin lasted longer as a feature phone than as a smartphone, which again was its initial purpose. The 2M was discontinued by Verizon in August of 2011, and while I wasn't able to find an exact date when the 1M was killed off, I'm sure it wasn't too long after that. The Microsoft Kin line of smartphones is definitely a unique chapter in the company's history. What began as an ambitious project resulted in a product that, due to corporate infighting, wasn't all it was meant to be. And today, we remember it as the smartphone that was sold for only 48 days, making it one of the shortest-lived tech products of all time. That's all for today's video. But if you're interested in some more Microsoft Kin goodness, I'll have another video linked up in the cards that'll be over on my Extras channel. That video will detail some of the odd things that I discovered about this specific Kin unit that I have here, and it kind of explains why I wasn't able to showcase the operating system or any of the applications running on the Kin in this video. I know that was kind of unfortunate, but I still hope you guys enjoyed this video nonetheless. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Be sure to get...
And that's why I make fun of the Microsoft Kin so much, because like, how do you make a phone that fails so hard, so fast? Like, it's just poof. It's just 48 a month, like a month and a half. It just goes, and you see it in stores for like a fire sale. Please take it. Like, what the hell happened? It's so interesting to me to see how fast like a product can be like put on the shelves and then immediately taken off. Anyway, back to sillier phones. This looks like a fucking Tamagotchi, so I have no idea what's going on. Let's find out.
I think the alien egg is hatching.
It's like the weirdest.
Imagine sitting down to breakfast with one of the biggest companies in the world and being told this.
We need to do something bold. Something nobody expects. I will give you budget, personnel, marketing, products, prices, and distribution. All I want from you is to go out and change the world.
The year was 2002. The place was Munich's Hotel Bayerischer
Oh God,
Hof,
here we go.
And the man with the sweet stash was Rudi Lamprecht of German tech giant Siemens, whose mobile division was at the time the world's fourth largest cell phone maker. The man on the other side of the table was George Appling, an American consultant whose acceptance of that offer would lead to what he once called the greatest job.
What in the hell is he holding?
Appling's team would go on to build a family of cell phones unlike any the world had yet seen.
What are you?
Promoted by a set of commercials, the likes of which I hope never to see again. But just 2 years later, this journey into tomorrow would be cut short. And a year after that, with its phone division losing 1.5 million euros per day, Siemens abandoned a 20-year legacy and left the mobile space entirely. This is the story of Excelibri.
What are all of these phones? These look like toys.
Yep, it's really pronounced that way. And no, Excelibri doesn't seem to mean anything. What's more important is what it's not.
While Siemens was and is a mammoth German conglomerate respected for its tech prowess, the effort it would take to parlay that reputation into something that resonated with fashion buyers was thought to be tougher than just starting from scratch. So, much like BBK Electronics would spawn the hip OnePlus brand over a decade later, Siemens incubated Excelibri as a kind of in-house startup, with over 40 employees working on its fashion-focused phones by the end of 2002.
Older fashion-focused. Okay,
Why
here we
fashion? Well, think about the world
Mammoth
Excelibri was entering.
Stop.
Just after the turn of the century, the mobile landscape was in the midst of a
Stop
dramatic
that.
shift from the utilitarian,
Europe is a weird
expensive,
country. Yeah.
kind of clunky handsets of the late 90s to the smaller, more affordable, and more attractive cell phone of the early aughts.
That last Samsung looks
This was the
super
era
nice.
of the Motorola V60, the Samsung A500, the Ericsson T68, phones small and attractive enough that they started to become status symbols. Excelibri leaned hard into that shift, veering away from traditional
They're
phones of the
little
type Siemens had
dinky,
always
but
sold
they always want-
toward a future of chic accessories that just happened to make phone calls. The best way to illustrate that is to show you some of the very rare samples that made this video
Weird
possible.
ass.
These come to me on loan
Boing.
from friend of the channel Valentinos, who managed to chase down 4 of the 8 phones Excelibri would eventually release in its first and only
Why does it
full
have a
year on the market.
Why does it have a buckle?
Just so you can get an idea of how weird these phones
that
really
foldable?
were, take a look at a Siemens handset typical of the period. While the SL56 is attractive and absolutely tiny, even by the standards of the time, it's also fairly conventional, you know? Screen, control collective,
Stop
sliding
calling
keypad.
phones attractive.
Next
Are
to
you
that,
talking to me or talking to
Excelibri
him?
2 looks like a prop from 2001's
Because these
Star
things
Trek
are
Enterprise.
attractive.
Its integrated belt clip ensuring that you could show it off.
Oh my God,
even
it
if
has
your
a-
Vulcan jumpsuit didn't have any pockets.
It looks like a
The
music
direct connection is
player.
actually legit here. The phone's internal nickname was apparently Alien Beauty.
What?
And Excelibri's whole first collection of 4
Him.
phones was named Space on Earth, in an apparent nod to George Appling's Trekkie roots.
The fuck? What the
But
fuck?
that collection wasn't launched at a Star Trek
I'm
convention.
still going to be
It
talking about
debuted
how
at a
attractive
splashy
these phones
London
are, though.
Fashion
So
Week
you can't
party
stop
in
me.
February 2003 with a 450 flat-screen stage, a production crew of 55, a helicopter, and an invite list of 1,300 that included Boy George and Christina Aguilera.
I just wanted to say that this entire thing so far has been the most 2000s thing I've ever seen.
Alongside the Alien Beauty that I have here.
Look at this thing. It looks like something that if you scanned a barcode with it, you can get a little digital monster to play with. Like, what the fuck? How am I supposed to call someone with this thing? The 2000s... No, the 2000s didn't suck. The 2000s gave us Linkin Park. The 2000s were weird. That's what they were.
Here there was the retro-futuristic classic, the Dark Hero, and something extremely rare for the time, a phone with no keypad, worn around the neck and controlled almost entirely by voice.
Oh, that sounds like a problem.
The collection went on sale later that spring.
Yeah, it looks like a scan monster thing. They're cool, but like, okay, hold on. Let's go back to this. That looks this looks like the most normal phone here, honestly, right? Dark Hero is a shield. It kind of also looks like, I don't know. It looks like a shield, I guess. It also kind of looks like a robot's face or something. This thing, I'm still baffled. Like, I can't imagine this going well at any point in time. Considering it doesn't have a fucking keypad, and you have to control it with voice. And then we already talked about the digi... Hold up. Wait, hold up. No, it looks like a fucking Digimon thing. Yes. It's just a longer version of this. It's just a longer one of these. I know I'm talking about scanners. Listen. No. But they look like fucking Digivices. It looks like a long Digivice. Do you guys see this? It's just a longer Digivice. I hate this. This is dumb. Again, the early 2000s core.
For the time, a phone with no keypad, worn around the neck and controlled almost entirely by
losing
voice.
my mind after this thing.
The collection went on sale later that spring, not on shelves in pedestrian phone shops, no, but alongside jewelry
Because I never
cases
bought,
in
because I
department
never
stores.
saw these things out in
A
the public.
high-profile launch befitting
Why?
a high-concept product with a fairly high price to match.
What the fuck?
Between $230 and $360 unlocked.
Oh god.
Now, it's not clear exactly when Siemens realized it had a problem on its hands, but my guess would be fairly shortly after launch. Reviews from the period are almost impossible to find because Accelibri only launched in a handful of markets, but what user experiences are still out there on the web are almost uniformly negative.
Accelibri had the same problem Nokia did during the same period.
That looks
If you
cool.
wanted
That looked
unusual
cool.
designs,
That looked
you had
cool.
to settle for unusual keyboards.
Those look cool.
And in the
Those
heyday
still
of
look
SMS
cool.
text messaging, changing your keypad to something that obliterates the user's muscle memory.
I can't say anything
that's just a
say-so right
horrible
now.
idea. What's more, these are seriously
What? You don't want to talk about Siemens? The company? You don't want to talk about the European company Siemens? Siemens. Siemens.
some of the worst keys I've touched. They're tiny, there's almost no traveler feedback, and you need to press so hard that it almost hurts to type.
Oh god, I just realized imagine
To make
texting
matters
on that
worse,
thing. What?
The Accelibri 2's software
Wife, I'm
is
grounding
sluggish.
you. You can't
Even though
ground
all it
me.
has to
I'm your
drive is
wife.
a 101 by 65 black and white display. In an era when color screens like Samsung's were the new hotness, this panel looks like the same one from the Nokia 3310, launched almost 3 years
It
prior.
looks like I'm gonna clip that
all
later.
the phones in the first collection used a common reference
just go
design,
ahead.
so with all of them you could
Just go
count
ahead
out
at this
data
point.
features, IR,
See,
Bluetooth,
men?
MMS. None of that was there.
It's a company that
And the
exists.
worst sin of all, they felt
Who's
cheap.
spelt like
Accelibri 2's
the same
creaky,
unsay-so
lightweight
thing, but you
build is
added
totally
an
outclassed
I
by
in
its
the in
contemporaries,
between.
Even those from Siemens itself.
Siemens.
This actually hurts.
Really, the only bright point I could find in this thing was the ringtone library.
Oh shit, it's ska. Hey, 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 pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Yeah. This is a fucking good ringtone. That went on
Accelibri
for
took
so
a
long.
different approach with its fall-winter collection. Another batch of 4 phones released
The phone
in
looks like
October
goes to the same
2003
places
under
it
the banner
names.
Fashion Extravaganza. Interestingly, the work of designing this collection was outsourced to a firm called IDEO, which counts among its achievements one of Apple's first mouse designs. As you might expect, this second collection got even wilder casings to go with
That
new
one's
color
just-
screens, which made it possible to squeeze
That
a little
one
more
looks
fun
cute.
into the phones in the form of these little animated bitmaps
That's
you
cute.
could send in the early MMS days.
That is cute.
Look at these kind of proto-animojis.
Aw, it's
I am sad.
It's a very-
I am confused.
I am
used these
confused.
Today. It's great.
I am confused.
Anyway, Accelibri was still big on pushing the wearable concept, so the 5 came with a keypad guard that latched into
What's
a
with the
lanyard so you could
anime
wear it around your neck. Meanwhile, the 7 looks like a normal phone until you turn it sideways to reveal it's actually from Cartoon World. Yeah, I always thought this was some kind of folding clamshell.
Does
when I
it?
saw
Oh,
in
it doesn't
pictures, but really,
fold.
it's just shaped like this so you can clip it onto a pocket or purse.
Oh, what the fuck?
I don't have the
Some of these are weird, but it's like, why would you want to put the display and keypad facing out into the public? What?
8, but it appears to be a peanut-shaped follow-on to the Accelibri 3 pendant. And the most distinctive of the whole lineup is perhaps the most lampooned of all early aughts cell phones.
Are durable as Nokia?
the
Probably
Accelibri
not.
6.
God, can you imagine?
Guess you don't need to.
Question: is that a makeup compact or is it a phone? Answer:
It's
why
a
not both?
spy device from the
Yeah,
movie.
Combining the horrible keyboard of the 2 with the cheap construction of, well, all of them, the Accelibri 6 didn't need a competitor to showcase its shortcomings.
Yeah, this looks like a thing from Totally Spies or like a really sexist Charlie's Angels movie. like, well, gee, it's just a compact. Like, oh my god.
But Panasonic built one anyway.
Oh, hey, look, Panasonic built
I
one.
had to snap
It
this up when
actually looks
Valentino
better.
sent me to the eBay auction. The Panasonic G70 of 2003 had the web browser, higher res display, and cover display the Excelibri 6 lacked in a much.
It's a pocket. It has a little thing you can hold. You can have a keychain on. This thing is a pocket. This thing is a pocket watch. This thing is a compact. This is
smaller casing that traded the embarrassment of a compact lookalike for that of a birth control pillbox lookalike.
Yeah, okay, I didn't want to say that
like
one,
this
but
form factor.
I didn't
As
think
a
about
kid,
that one.
I loved Pinky's Magic Compact on the Noozles and the Turtlecom from TMNT. Just like the kids of 2001 loved the Compouter from Totally Spies. But
you
these
made
were
the
supposed to be
comparison.
phones for adults. Discerning, high-powered adults who watched cable TV.
Anime background.
In an interview with Campaign at the time, Excelibri's vice president of marketing said, "We knew
Is
our
that Judy
communication had to be as provocative as our phones." Well, between the ad designed by Mother London and the one directed by David Fincher, I'd say mission accomplished.
What is actually going on?
When all was said and done, though, no amount of provocation.
Wow, so they
could
just had
provoke
yeah,
enough
they
people
just
to
had
pick up
blackface in one of
an
the
Excalibur.
commercials.
By the end of 2003, the division made up less than 2%.
I just want to say, I really like this design. It's really cute. It reminds me of a little buckle and like a transformer, and it's very square. It's very nice. I like. Out of all these, I like this one the most. Yeah. Oh, you saw that too. I thought I was seeing things. No,
About
yeah, that was just
720,000 units.
blackface.
Accordingly,
So
they were subjected to massive markdowns in an effort
Good
to
job.
move inventory. The last of whatever sheen may have remained completely fading away when they were dumped.
it was a
from
trippy
chic
ad, but
boutiques
also
to bargain bins at discount supermarkets.
What the fuck?
And in May of 2004, Siemens pulled the plug on the whole Excelibri experiment.
So you could say that Siemens pulled out of the mobile phone industry. I don't know, just thinking about it. Just wanted to say that out loud.
It was a bloody nose for the company that kicked off the millennium, saying it wanted to take over the cell phone world, and for reasons unrelated to Excelibri, the situation would only
Grounded.
get worse.
You can't ground me.
A year later, with its mobile division losing 1.5 million euros per day, Siemens would sell the whole phone business to BenQ,
Oh,
where it met its
no.
final, inevitable end in 2007. It's easy to look back with perfect hindsight and point out all the places Excelibri went wrong, but in
that's just
research
a
for this
scanner.
video, I was surprised at how much foresight the folks behind this brand actually had. While today's phones are too big to serve as fashion accessories, wearable tech has become a fully realized category unto itself. Excelibri also correctly predicted that people would someday buy phones unlocked in more markets than just Europe, and carry different phones for different situations, opening an opportunity for manufacturers to try to accelerate the phone upgrade cycle.
I still want a
And
foldable.
phones did, in
I want a
fact,
foldable.
become the status symbols Excelibri wanted them to be, with collaborations between manufacturers and designers now common.
But my favorite thing that anyone got right from this whole story belongs to George Appling, the consultant whom Siemens recruited to build Excelibri in the first place. As he told Outsmart magazine, "When I was 35, I wrote stop far ahead in my calendar on the day I would turn 40. The notation was to remind me to finally stop working for other people and do something that I love."
Appling took his own advice. He would go on to co-found the Sherwood Forest Fair east of Austin, Texas.
Well, this is entirely-
fulfilling a lifelong goal of merging his business background
This is
and
entirely
personal passion. For the rest of us, still obsessing over 18-year.
So this man worked in business for years and then decided to stop and literally live in the forest. I mean, good on him. But what? I know, it's awesome from the dude. I'm just like, he just decided to stop and just live in the forest now. God, I wish I could do that now.
Your old cell phones?
It's cool.
The takeaway is complicated. You could say that all the bold choices we
This thing
bored
would
phone
fit in a
reviewers
tech
call
course
on
stuff for
manufacturers to
now.
make have in many cases
Dude
already
literally
been
quit his
made,
bid off his
and
job
the
to
cost
developer.
is
I
often
mean, I
been higher
wish
than the
I could do
reward. But failure is almost always a combination of factors.
Okay, listen, this one is like super close to techwear already. I kind of like just, this is so close to techwear, I swear. Like if this wasn't on a if this wasn't like a lanyard and was like on your belt, I could see it.
And while Accelibri definitely made plenty
Although it
of
is
its own
pretty thick and
missteps,
kind of looks like a
I tend to think that the parent company, Siemens, is largely to blame for its own situation. And after all, you don't just go from one of the biggest phone makers in the world to selling off a money-losing business that quickly.
I like the square phone.
Issues. Maybe that's a history I'll plumb.
Like the round ones
day.
are weird and unique.
For now,
but
I'm
looks
glad
like it's
I
Lego.
finally got to learn about
It looks
Accelibri,
like a Transformer
maker
toy.
Of some of the weirdest
That's what I think
handhelds
about it.
ever made, from an era when animojis were 8-bit, Christina Aguilera headlined tech parties, and phones were fun.
It still looks like a medical device or something. Okay. I'm going to skip this one because I'm not sure about how the lasting power of that. Let's go. We're going to do more phone stuff. Don't worry about it. This one is the Samsung Ultra Music. So, okay, so this is 2007. We're going into like we're going into maybe more modern smartphone time, but you know, let's see what happens.
Sponsored by Yubico.
Yubico.
You know, in the world of vintage phone reviews, I'm not sure it gets any more mid-aughts than Eric Lynn asking in a review for Phone Scoop circa 2007, what if you flipped over your MP3 player and there was a cell phone on the back?
Ooh. Okay.
When Sprint announced
this
this
is
credit
good.
card-sized curiosity in March of 2007, the idea of a music phone was already firmly established.
This is
My
going
first
in a
dumb
good
phone
spot.
with an MP3 player was Nextel's i870, released
What's
about a year and a half
mid-aught?
prior.
For some reason, I don't know why, the decade after the 90s is called the aughts. Like the AUG, like it's called the aughts. And I have no fucking clue why, and it makes no sense. Yeah, the equivalent term in British English is the noughties. Who thought this was like an idea? The noughties became a common name for the decade in the UK. Although use of the word aught to refer to zero is not widespread in the US, the use of aughts to identify the decade became common there. Oh, because it's got a lot of... yeah, I don't know. It's a bad name. It still is. I just say early 2000s.
Around the same time,
Or
Sony
turn of the
Ericsson's
century.
famous Walkman phones took off, and Motorola's infamous Rocker line failed to do the same.
I wanted one of those. I know. I
But
remember
it was Samsung, as usual, that took the concept of the music phone to the brink of the absurd, dividing the two functions across the two faces
Aught
of what
from
globally
not,
are called
yeah,
the Ultra Music
that's
phone,
weird.
and what we in the States came to know as the Samsung Upstage.
I kind of like it. I like that when you like flip it upside down, it looks like an entirely different product. Let's see how bad it goes.
The choice of Upstage as a name was almost certainly an homage to Sprint's very first MP3-enabled phone, the Samsung Uproar, but it would prove an unfortunately ironic moniker. Remember, this was March 2007.
No
and
safe way to
Apple's
put
first
it down.
iPhone was just 3 months
The only
from
safe way to put it down is to put
upstaging
it on
the
its
Upstage,
side.
along with every other music phone on the market. Fortunately for Sprint, and those of us who worked there at the time, that didn't happen overnight.
And there's a
Yeah, I
camera.
was still slinging phones when the Upstage debuted, and I remember selling quite a few of them, especially once the Beyoncé edition B phone launched in October.
B phone.
So it was no surprise to me that someone had
Comes
the
with a
foresight
text
to
copy
preserve
of
an
the B
Upstage
movie.
on eBay, still sealed in original retail packaging. Let's pop it open and see how kind 14 years of storage have or haven't been to this curiosity.
It's free.
I wonder if Sprint will still honor my free ringtone screensaver or game request.
Aw, he looks like
Wow.
Shelby from Friends.
I'm just
as much as
it
men
is
from the early
ridiculous to me
2000s
how
did.
small this is. I mean, it's a little taller, but it is way, way thinner than that N95
Ooh,
I
it's
just played
thin.
with. Yeah, dubious new rating on this, but maybe it's just
Oh no!
Oh dear.
Oh no!
I don't know if this is rubber. I assume this is rubber reversion. I don't know where it's coming from, but this is the most severe case I have seen. This is liquid.
It's coming.
Oh, it's under there.
No.
It's a soft pad on which the phone was meant to sit, and it has completely reverted to a liquid latex state.
Oh, gross.
Jaime informs me that happened to him with the Touch Diamond. Tell us more, Jaime.
It was the most horrible, gooey experience.
Oh
my God! Don't shake my hand. There you go.
Ew.
I love a new old phone.
But it looks good. It looks good.
Drink up, friend.
It's just the case doesn't.
Uh-oh. Oh boy, this is not encouraging.
Uh-oh. Yee.
Yeah, it turns out 14 years sitting untouched will kill some batteries so dead even Dr. Crusher can't bring them back. And to make matters worse, the
trying.
Upstage's battery is non-removable, owing to its peculiar design. Fortunately, crying on social media sometimes actually helps. Big thank you to friend of the channel Alvaro, who shipped me his very own old phone all the way from Mexico City. Now this is the Ultra Music F300 model I mentioned before, but aside from its higher-res camera, SIM card slot, and Telcel branding, it's functionally identical to the M620 Upstage. So it's a great stand-in to try and recall how this little weirdo actually worked.
Funky little weirdo.
The answer is, well, very strangely. But before we get to that, I want to make a quick point. Earlier this year, I reviewed Samsung's Galaxy Z Fold 2, easily the most impressive smartphone of 2020, and part of a family of devices that I believe will irrevocably shift the course of mobile technology, once Samsung figures out how to deliver this experience for less than $2,000. And the only thing I really took issue with was Samsung's refusal to include anything extra in the box, despite that high price. By contrast, 2007's Upstage came with everything you need to connect it to your computer, an audio adapter with a 3.5mm port so you could use your own headphones with it, pretty rare in those days, a 64MB micro SD card for your music, and not just a case, but a battery case that the phone could slot into in order to triple its talk time.
Ooh.
It's a clever design. You can access either side of the handset without taking it out, and while I do remember seeing some people in the wild talking on the Upstage with the leather flap deployed, you did have the option of keeping the case closed while talking, thanks to the earpiece hole here. And you got all that for $149 in 2007.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Sure, you had to sign a 2-year contract for the privilege, but that's still
It came.
quite a
It's
value.
like a big old little kit.
Now, curiously, one of the small differences between the M620 and F300 models of this phone is the design of the dock connectors that interface with that battery case. The Ultra Music will not plug into the Upstage's wallet, so I wasn't able to bolster my battery when taking this phone out to get a little sunlight on it. Not to worry, though, it lasted long enough for me to remember how it works, which is to say, about as bizarrely as you think it does, and I'll share that experience after a quick word from my sponsor.
It's using gestures and
By now,
like
you
swiping?
probably know that
Funky.
two-factor authentication is more secure than a simple password.
I'm leaving
but you
this
might not
ad
know
here
that
because
even
it's
with
actually
two-factor enabled,
useful for
your accounts
everybody.
can still be stolen through things like man-in-the-middle attacks or SIM swaps. If you need more security than SMS text messages or authenticator apps can offer, or you're just tired of copying and pasting passcodes with every login, consider a YubiKey from today's sponsor. Security keys with Fido support.
Did you already
like
watch
this
the
are
Holofunk stuff?
only
Yes, I did.
two-factor method proven to prevent phishing attacks and account takeovers. Because just like the key to a
latest
door,
week is so
you need to
cute.
have your YubiKey
I love the
physically
latest
with
week.
you in order to access your accounts. Also, just like a door key, you don't have to worry about battery power or mobile connectivity. You just plug it into your computer or tap it to your phone. Hit the link in the description and use code MrMobile10 to get $10 off any YubiKey 5 series purchase. And thanks to Yubico for sponsoring this video.
Y'all should buy it. Y'all
Now,
should
if the
buy
first words
it.
that come to your
Y'all
mind
should
when you
buy
hear
one.
dual-sided phone
Security is
are
important. Y'all
usability
should buy
nightmare,
one.
to be fair, Samsung actually did a better job here than you might expect.
Oh no, I
To begin
watched
with,
it
you can
on my
only
own
use
time.
one side of
Not
the phone
not
at a
not
time,
here though.
and there's no finicky accelerometer trying to guess which side is facing up, as we see in modern experimental phones like the Surface Duo. Instead, A simple side button toggles you between front and back, with
Oh.
a physical lock switch above that to prevent accidental touches. Now, while the F300 here
Can
is
it plug
pretty
into a
as you
phone?
like it, with what it allows you to do on the phone side,
Oh,
up to and
I
including the
absolutely
browser and
loved
even
it.
the camera,
Oh my god,
I
that's such
remember
a
the
tiny
Sprint
display
version
screen.
being restricted to talk and text features only. Everything
I
else,
worked-
you had to
Oh, you
flip
worked on
the
some of
phone
the
over
charts?
for,
Nice.
and there begins my sadness. This side is first and
I can't wait to
foremost
play
an
it.
MP3 player. But while years of muscle memory had at this point conditioned iPod users to assume this control pad must be a scroll wheel, nope. This is an early form of capacitive panel that we used to refer to as an electrostatic touchpad, which is very cool, but the way Samsung designed the interface is very not. You see, you scroll by swiping up, down, or left, right, with scrolling speed determined by how long you leave your thumb on the pad. But the phone often over or underestimates how far you want to go. To make matters worse, some areas of the pad do serve as buttons when the under-panel icons are illuminated, but because it's a touchpad, there's no physical feedback at all, because we hadn't started adding haptics to touch
Search
controls
time.
yet.
Hold on.
And then the button in the middle is actually a physical button. You know, it all ends up being so confusing that I even got lost more than once during the tutorial.
Looks so confusing.
It is weird to me that
It's
I
a
have
weirdo.
basically
Also,
zero
hi,
memory
Zelius.
of helping
How's it
customers
going?
set this up, because as I mentioned, I sold a lot of them in my Sprint days. The
We're
only thing I
learning about
vaguely
weird
do recall
phones.
is having to flip the
And when
thing
phones
over
weren't
every time I needed to
dumb
enter
gray
text.
bricks or
It was just
black
kind of
bricks.
bizarrely inconvenient, and that's one of the reasons I've never bought one, probably.
But you know, that's just an unavoidable byproduct of the environment into which the Upstage launched. This pre-iPhone, pre-Android, spaghetti at the wall, kitchen sink, choose your own cliche Wild West of experimentation. In 2007,
there's the
there
alias.
seemed to be a phone for every niche, and despite its UI stumbles and the
I had
typically
one of those.
underwhelming camera
I guess I
performance
saw
for
one.
the time, this phone did
Oh, it's a
advance the
Jiva.
state of digital music. Alongside the Upstage, Sprint launched its first over-the-air MP3 download service, charging the same 99 cents per song as iTunes, and bundling in some PC music management software as well. Of course, these days, manual management of music and per-track charges sound nightmarishly arcane, but back then, the ability to download a song over the air
I don't
anywhere
trust a
you
phone in
were
the
in
shape.
Sprint's
It
3G
makes
coverage
me
area
want to see
and
how
pay for it on your monthly bill. That was powerful stuff. And interface shortcomings aside,
It's a very
the
yeetable
care with
device.
which this new kind of device was presented by Sprint and Samsung, right down to the prettiest and most in-depth full-color user manual I've ever seen come with a phone, well, combined with the one-of-a-kind form factor, it all adds up to a kind of gadget you just don't see anymore.
It kind of feels like if you had a cell phone on one side and then a like a music player on the other, and then they combined, so you wanted to see how far you could throw it and see how much it would break. Like I want to throw it so much just to see how much it would break and how much money I would be screwed over with. I don't know.
More. A memento from a time when G's were 3, accessories were free.
Accessories
and
are so
phones
damn cute.
Were fun.
Oh, so we're watching like a bunch of these because they were recommended, and the series for is just great. Then speaking of the Nokia Zelius, the next one is when Nokia was batshit insane. So let's watch it when Nokia was batshit insane, shall we?
There it is. You remember them for the phone no one could break, or for the phone that had all the features before having all the features was a thing. But you might not remember that for a few years there, while the killers were killing the billboards, Google was first going public, and so was Janet Jackson, Finnish phone maker Nokia was going a little bit crazy.
What?
Like, I mean, what?
You can't use this as a phone.
I like it. It's a
Oh
leaf.
man! All right, let's do this. I'm
It
Mr.
looks like a
Mobile,
fantasy
and this is when phones
version of
were
a phone.
fun.
These all look like a ninja
Hey
store.
folks, I hope you don't mind me dressing down a little for this one, but this is the only shirt I could find from the mid-aughts that I still owned and that I still fit into. True fact.
It just
this
looks like a
pocket right
leaf.
here is where I used to store my Discman, so it's big enough for even the largest of these weirdos.
My European friends are always surprised to hear this, but between 2002 to 2006 or so, when Nokia was just pouring itself whatever was in the party punch bowl, here in the USA, phones were a lot more conventional. Smartphones existed, but they were mostly Blackberries or Sidekicks, and they were a tiny sliver of the market. The most common phones you'd usually see on the streets were small silver clamshells. As a result, I didn't own one of these bizarrotrons, so please join me in thanking friend of the channel Martin for this whole box of beautifully preserved specimens for your viewing pleasure. Most of them are European models with branding and user manuals in various languages I can't read, but even the box art speaks to the totally different era these products came from.
Oh my.
Before I even opened these, I knew I was going to have a good time.
Ooh.
Now, before I get to the true weirdos, here's a phone I'm going to skip for today. Not because I don't want to cover the Nokia 6820, but because I'm planning another episode of this series for devices like it. See, this was part of a subclass that came to be known as messaging phones. You could use them as a typical handset, but they also featured a full QWERTY keyboard, usually hidden behind a slider. Well, Nokia's 6800 family took a really clever approach to that problem, and I'll talk more about it when we get to that episode. Let's kick things off properly with the Nokia 3560. Sorry, no, 3650. Man, one thing I do not miss is Nokia's numeric stew of confusion. Almost as confusing, this keypad. Modeled after an old-fashioned rotary phone, the numbers encircle the perimeter of the pad instead of filling it up with the usual grid, and it plays horrible mind games
It looks
with
like
your muscle
a
memory.
weird
Well, it's not the
TV
worst
remote.
keypad in this video. Stay tuned to the end for that. It was apparently divisive enough that Nokia replaced it with a conventional keyboard in a sequel called the 3660.
Oh, hey, look, it's better now.
Now, that means the 3650 was successful enough to warrant that sequel, and it's easy for me to imagine why. I remember I was working at a mall around this time, and I was walking back from my lunch hour, and I passed the T-Mobile kiosk where the guy working there was using this phone to watch an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Ooh, you can
Needless
watch
to
TV
say, I
on it.
was, intrigued.
Remember, at the time, most phones in the States were just getting polyphonic ringtones. So a device that could play full TV episodes was something. The 3650 was the first phone with an integrated camera to be sold in North America. 0.3 megapixels, hold on to your butts. And it was the first phone sold in the US with Nokia's Symbian S60 platform. So it was a true smartphone, in the sense that you could load up a compressed LimeWire rip of a TNG episode onto an SD card and play it back in glorious 12-bit color through a relic like Real Player. Now, this is a 17-year-old phone at this point, so of course it's cumbersome and clunky to navigate, but I'm actually surprised by how responsive
It looks
is.
like it's...
And ergonomically speaking,
Man, it looks like
wow,
it's running a
crazy
mobile version of
comfortable.
Windows 98.
While, like all the phones in this video, it's cheap and plasticky, there's not a hard edge on it. Feels good in the hand, as they say. If I'd been on a GSM carrier back in the day, I think I'd have considered the 3660. It's quite attractive. And speaking of attractive, let's have a gander at the next. Ah! Woo! Oh, man, I'm sorry about that, but this is heinous. Remember how I kept calling the Sidekick a
Penguin.
meatball in the last episode?
Back in the day, if I wanted to watch
this
TV on
is
the
a
go, I had to
legitimate
grab my
potato.
Game Boy
I'm gonna
Advance.
call it the Nokia Spud.
Game Boy TV, I remember
I'm just
that.
kidding. Save your hate mail.
They were
the
kind
Nokia
of
6600,
weird,
which
but,
is
you know.
what this is actually called, was marketed as a business phone when it launched in 2003, and dudes, it sold. Nokia put more than 150 million of these into suit pockets across Europe and the Middle East, which means it outsold the first Motorola Razr. Demand was so high, in fact, that it
Video
remained in
now,
production until
yes.
2007. Why the success? Well, the product placement in the movie Cellular probably didn't hurt, but really it was the business features, like corporate email support,
It's
a mobile VPN
kinda
client,
wide.
and even a virtual wallet application for online purchases.
Virtual wallet?
It also packed the table stakes like VGA camera, Bluetooth, and the common for the time IR port, which you could use to transfer data between phones wirelessly, and slowly. All this ran once again on the Series 60 platform, which was first announced back in 2001 in this
Is that a
peculiar
slider
package.
thing?
God, November of 2001, phones in Europe look like this. Meanwhile, I'm living in Virginia, limping to the barn with a Sprint phone that looks like this. I should have studied abroad.
Not that the 7710 is a looker, but it's one of those products that's so ugly it's, well, if not pretty, then at least interesting. That's probably what led to its marketing tie-in with the dystopian future thriller Minority Report.
Oh.
But it was its litany of features that cemented it in phone history. It was the first Nokia with a camera and MMS messaging to send it with, one of the first with Bluetooth, and it married those with an internal antenna and the always fun slide-out keyboard. Bummer that it's not an assisted slide, no springs to be found here, but at least you can still slap it shut. Other signs of the times ranged from the convenient, a user-replaceable battery, to the less convenient, a 2.5mm headphone jack, to the delightfully odd, a dedicated voice memo button.
Ooh.
This actually shows up on a few of these Nokias, and it reminds me of how many drunken voice memos I used to leave myself on my Samsung
are still kind of
A600
recent.
in college.
Sorta.
For that story, be sure you're subscribed for the next episode.
Sorta? Just sorta?
All right, now that you've seen the beginning of Nokia's smartphone legacy, you gotta check out its fat middle.
Where's the hell
The
space?
7710 looks less like a phone than one of those dashboard
Oh my God.
GPSs that would become popular in the years
Is that
following
real play?
its
It came in real
2004
player?
release.
Whoa.
This was a replacement for the Nokia 7700, which was canceled, presumably because it looked like a rejected prototype for a bicycle helmet Napoleon Dynamite might have worn as a kid.
It looks like
it also required the user to side talk, like the infamous Taco phone, aka the Nokia N-Gage, which I covered in a video a few years back. The 7710 was a full touchscreen phone with an integrated stylus and a few physical controls that actually make sense. The display was roomy for the time, with the same 3.5-inch diagonal that the first iPhone would launch with 3 years later, and it came with some fun tripod-like accessory to stand it up with, and also a frankly horrible-looking leather case.
Sadly, the phone lacked not only 3G, which was even becoming common on Nokias of the time, but it also omitted Wi-Fi.
Oh.
So you had this big for the time display, but you were stuck loading websites at less than dial-up speeds.
Yee.
The new Series 90 platform was apparently also undercooked at launch, and all this combined with a strange form factor, high price, and increased competition from platforms like Windows Mobile to basically kill the 7710. The phone was discontinued, Series 90 was canceled, and I was allowed to move on to our final, much more fun phone.
Oh yeah, babe, Ninja Star.
This is, without question, the most ridiculous phone I've ever held. Is it a leaf? An eyeball?
It looks like a leaf.
An ancient Egyptian artifact? Sure, whatever you want. All rules are out the window with the Nokia 7600 announced in the fall of 2003. About the only conventional things on it were the Symbian S40 platform, changeable express-on covers like those we saw on the 3650.
Oh, cute. Cases.
3560? No, 3650. And a design ethos that seemed to say, F it, man.
The Millennium phone. There's so many names you could give it.
Threading the leather wrist strap through the corner pocket, I got to thinking maybe I could carry this as a weekend dumb phone if I could get it working. You know, just to discourage my constant impulse to text.
It also kind of looks
Because,
like you could hurt someone
You don't
with
want to text
that.
on these keys.
I don't know.
They're horrible. You don't want to use this D-pad. It's horrible too. And you absolutely don't want to talk on it, which you have to do by tilting it diagonally and wincing through the pain of hard plastic on all the wrong parts of your ear.
This phone is a bludgeoning
At least
device.
it had polyphonic
If you put two of them together, I think you can get a good weapon out of it, yeah.
Really, the 7600 is at its best just sitting there and attracting ogles from passersby, which is why Nokia marketed it to the fashion segment, exclusively overseas.
Because, fuck
to
it,
read the
I
user
guess.
reviews at s21.com, well, I mean, it ranges from embarrassing to celebrity-worthy to just a total piece
This
of
episode
junk.
of the
Aye.
My favorite is this user in 2008 who boasted, "I go for style uniqueness. That's why I dominate conversations and gossips."
Thanks, buddy.
Man, you keep doing you. Respect. As I slip the 7600 back into its dope travel sack, I will say this is not the last we'll hear from Nokia in this series. The company has many more examples of crazy design from this period. Why? Well, it was the dawn of the smartphone era. New designs were needed for new interface paradigms and new, more powerful internals. That meant new casings were needed as well, and companies like Nokia decided to push into every possible corner of far-flung theory and thought. We're seeing something similar happening in foldables today, and that's one of the reasons I'm so excited for them. But I don't think we'll ever quite recapture the off-the-wall brazenness and exotic experimentation of Nokia in the noughties. Back in the days when phones were fun.
Nokia was on some
This video was not paid for.
phone-based weapon. I miss weapons. I miss it when technology could just be used as like a... Yeah. is just a weapon. Here we go. Let me just... Okay, so we're now going to QWERTY phones with keyboards. So like, you know, the optimal phone. Basically, the optimal phone. Use my phone to... Why don't we adapt weapons into technology? I don't know. I want a keyboard with a knife. Think about it. Be cool.
The year is 2008. I've just graduated from college in Virginia, and before I ship
How many
off to
phone
Boston,
videos are left
the bar
here?
I've
This is the last one. Don't worry. And then we get to more entertaining stuff like video games. And a silly robot
hung out at
that
for 7
did not
years
do a good
gives me
job
this
at
bowling
existing.
shirt as a graduation gift. Still fits.
More importantly, Reuters reports that same year that Americans have just crossed a milestone. For the first time, they're sending more text messages than phone calls. Some are still laboriously tapping them out on numeric
I love silly
keypads.
robot, yeah.
Others are texting more
Jill hates
easily
his hair
but
so
more
much.
expensively on Blackberries and Palm Trios. And right in between, manufacturers see an opportunity.
I get it.
What
I
if
get
they could
it.
cram a full keyboard into a phone without packing in all the complexity
Look,
and cost of
it's
making
the
a
Samsung.
smartphone?
It's the Alias.
I'm Michael Fisher. Join
I
me
remember
for a
that
look
one. I
back
had
at a
that
category
boy.
that's a lot more fun than it sounds. Let's revisit the
I have
messaging
this.
phone.
I had that one.
As my European friends are no doubt already saying in the comments, yes, we Americans were very late to the texting boom. As far back as 2001, Nokia had figured out how to cram a full keyboard into a dumb phone at the low, low cost of, well, being the subject of a Bubba Sparks video. Yeah, the 5510
looks
isn't
like
like
a-
the phalanx of Finnish phones I featured in my last Nokia
Man,
video.
it just looks
most
like
of which
a,
looked like the products of a weekend-eating fun fungi. While this general design would
It's
eventually
very
evolve
taco-
into useful and
taco
even
shaped.
beloved weirdos like the 3300 and the N-Gauge, at this stage it was just a bunch of tiny keys dumped onto either side of a monochrome LCD lifted right from the Nokia 3310.
So
But the durability that
3310
made that phone
thrown onto
legendary
its
isn't
side.
anywhere to be found here. The creaks of this casing are just as loud as the clacks from the deeply unsatisfying keys.
Yeah. I can
And
break
according
it.
to reviews of the time, the backplate was notoriously easy to crack. Also, the phone wasn't just focused on messaging. Check out the hard key shortcuts to the FM radio and MP3 player down here, and you'll see it was also one of the first music phones.
Interactive CD-ROM.
With 64 megabytes of onboard storage for your MP3s.
Ooh,
Given those
64.
features, maybe this price tag of €500 or nearly $800 adjusted for inflation makes sense. Yeah, I know my Samsung 3500 didn't have these features in 2001. Still, coyote ugly, man. Let's move on.
Gross. Old gross.
Now, this is the kind of communicator that gets you a commendation for original thinking.
This one just looks...
Jerry-rig everything called
Yeah,
2002's
funky.
Nokia 6800 the coolest phone he ever owned, and it's easy to see why. Cell phone in the streets, texter in the sheets. By 2004, the concept had matured into this Nokia 6820, an absolutely tiny phone compared to its predecessor. But just like that Forerunner, it crammed a full QWERTY keyboard into that compact
it's such a
casing by
smart
hiding
design.
it with a hinge. Now, these keys are still kind of cramped by today's standards with
It
poor
looks like a
travel
pain
and
in the
only
ass
moderate
to type
feedback,
on, but at least it's
they
a full
were a
keyboard.
huge improvement over the original. Also, while the 6800's design made me feel pretty smart because I could see the gold contacts that would tell the software when the keyboard was stowed or deployed, the 6820's approach of building that switch into the hinge itself is much cleaner. Sure, the display was a postage stamp and the camera wasn't great given the kind of phones that would hit the scene just a year later, but with a concept this innovative and execution this tight, I can't help but adore the 6820. Don't agree? Hey, it's my life. You can leave or get out. That enough period song references for you? Okay then, let's slide on over to the form factor that would come to define messaging
Okay,
phones,
so we're
at least
getting
in the
sliding
US.
ones. Sliding boys.
So the LG Rumor is probably the least interesting phone in this video. I probably wouldn't have even included it if it weren't for the fact that I owned it, and it's the reason I made a Facebook account. So thanks for that, I guess.
See, in 2007, even though Facebook was the new social spot, my stubborn self was still clinging to the carcass of MySpace talking to Tom, until I bought this phone and discovered that one of the preloaded Java apps was Facebook. So I joined, and, until everyone's racist old relatives showed up, it was a pretty cool place to be. But anyway, it wasn't the apps that kept me on the LG rumor, nor was it the durability, because I broke it very easily. It was how competently it
This
executed
interface
its
also
core
just
function
reminds
of
me
making messaging easier.
of
The
my
numerics
phone.
click, the slider snaps, the QWERTY clacks. I've never used a dumb phone before or since with a keyboard this satisfying. That's a sentiment apparently shared by the former owner of this phone, Megan, who loves Harry Potter. Also, I hope you got that social studies homework done, Emily. Mr. Feeney's a tough one. Yeah, I had to get this phone from eBay in this US cellular trim because my Sprint model is long gone. But thanks to its micro SD slot, the photos from my old rumor remain in my archive. As you can see, by 2007 standards, this was a pretty okay 1.3 megapixel camera, and it made up for its lack of flash with color filters of, dubious usefulness.
Huh.
It was never my first choice of shooter at the time, but I'm glad I had it with me to snap this shot of my director Conrad grinding this sword for our production of Rashomon.
Ooh.
Actual, real talk, we lost Conrad earlier this year, so I'm happy I was able to snap these at the time.
Oh no,
The best
hair.
camera is the one you've got on you, after all. Now, a slider is all well and good, but when you think about it, wouldn't 2 sliders be better? Enter the Matrix. No, not that one. No, not that one either. This Matrix is from Pantech.
What?
Oh, and this particular phone is on loan from Avi Greengard,
What the
president
hell?
and lead analyst
Ooh.
at Texponential, who's also been kind enough to lend me a lot of other artifacts for this series. Seriously, stay tuned. Anyway, just like the company's Helio Ocean and Pantech Duo, the Matrix stacks 2 sliders one atop the other, so your numeric keypad pops out in portrait and the QWERTY slides out in landscape. Now, this does make it a big ice cream sandwich of a phone.
Ooh.
And while the Matrix was faster than the Rumor thanks to its 3G connection, the Rumor was easier to use one-handed because the numpad was just always exposed. But the real bummer on the Matrix was the lack of space for the keys
such
to
a
depress. Plus, there's no room above the
weighted
top key
design?
row, so your
It
thumbs
looks
are
so
always
hard to
bumping up
look.
against the bottom of the screen. And the whole thing suffers from a combo common to the era, a glossy gel coat surface with a hollow plastic void beneath. Not exactly a pocket full of sunshine.
Stop.
All right.
When are we
I
getting the
admit
good
I rushed
boys?
through that one so we could get to our final.
Yeah,
device. My personal
baby!
favorite, certainly, but also one of the best sequels in mobile phone history.
This one's the best.
Samsung's Alias
I love this one.
Kind of like the clamshell version of the Pantech Matrix. Open the hinge one way and it's a phone, open it the other way and it's a texting machine. Now this is the Alias 2 of 2008. Yeah, it brought some spec bumps and it ported over some features from the first one. Yeah.
I had
All right,
this
let's
one,
stop and talk about this.
and
If
I
you remember
loved it.
Microsoft Bob,
You'll see why.
This is very similar, where the idea is to make software less intimidating if it's presented in the context of something familiar. So you get this dorm room home screen with all your menu items laid out in a kind of skeuomorphism writ large. It's not something I could live with today. But back in 2008, if I were a Verizon customer, I'd have lapped up whatever dumb UI they were dishing out in exchange for this ultimate gadget of a keyboard.
Keypad.
See, instead of just painting a bunch of numbers and letters on the keys like the first Alias,
watch.
the Alias 2 made each of these rubber buttons transparent, and it stuck a tiny e-ink screen under each one. That meant they wouldn't just change function when you switched which mode you were using, they'd also change appearance. So in messaging mode, you'd get a full QWERTY keyboard, complete with arrow keys, and in phone mode, you had way more buttons than you needed. So in addition to the usual numerics and D-pad, Samsung gave you shortcuts to messaging, camera, Bluetooth, the alarm clock, tons of stuff. E-ink is the same display tech that makes things like the Amazon Kindle possible. It only uses power when it changes state, so it's just perfect for this application. Now, the downside is it's tricky to use because all the keys have to be the same size, and there's no way to feel out a difference between them. But the combination of the comfy, gummy finish, reminiscent of the Palm Centro, and the sheer geeky, gadgety goodness makes it impossible for me to really criticize. In fact, I coveted this phone so much that back in the days when BlackBerry press events were still a thing, I used to hound BlackBerry executives to build a Key 3 with an Alias-style keypad with OLEDs instead of e-ink. So they could change function or language on the fly, or even do some rainbow backlighting like Razer keyboards. That never happened, of course, and the Alias 2 fell victim to the same market forces that ultimately killed every other interesting dumb phone, the rise of the unremarkable slab smartphone. So even though the products featured in this episode of When Phones Were Fun had more than their share of shortfalls, and we wouldn't really want to own any of them today, we can at least take a page from Fallout Boy and say, thanks for the memories, even though they weren't so great.
Early 2000s.
Thanks again to my friend Avi Greengard, who's been
But
covering
like,
tech.
yo, I still have it. I still love it just because of the nerdiness of the way it works. Like, the front screen, I could not give a damn about. Sure, it's just like a big old LCD. But, like, the e-ink, this keypad, that was, like, the best part of it. It was the best part of it, and I used it every single day when I had it. Made me so happy. Okay, this video is about a silly robot. Its name is Jibo. Listen to Jibo.
This is a Google Home.
That's not
I
a
use it
Jibo.
almost every day, but I don't really care about it. Same goes for my Amazon Echo. It's useful, but I have no emotional bond with Alexa. These are tools, nothing more. This is a collection of the same basic components. Processor, speakers, microphone. But Jibo was made to be a companion.
Look at him.
And for all the things he failed at, it's only in saying goodbye to Jibo that we realize his greatest success.
Look at the friend.
When I published my review of Jibo in June 2018, the company that built him was already in trouble. That very month, it laid off much of its workforce here in Boston. Then, just after Thanksgiving, it closed its doors for good, selling its assets to a venture lending firm in New York. To call that anything but a failure would do a disservice to the people who lost their jobs.
Cute.
Not to mention the customers who had paid up to $900 and waited years for a Time magazine headline dream, only to receive a YouTube punchline nightmare. As a practical assistant, Jibo was not good. I spent almost half my review complaining about the things he couldn't do or could only do poorly. And it's probably no surprise to hear that once everyone got laid off, he never got much better at the basics. But the reason this video exists is because Jibo's core mission succeeded. See, once the company turned off the lights, I had nowhere to send my review robot back to, so Jibo took up a permanent place in the corner of my living room. For the past, hang on a sec. Hey Jibo, how old are you?
I'm 430,419 minutes old, but who's counting?
Yeah, so for that long, he's been my apartment's little mascot, looking out the window, watching birds when I'm not around, and swiveling to greet me when I am. Remember, he doesn't just wait for you to give him a command, he recognizes who you are and says hello.
Oh, hey Michael, how are you?
He tells you fun facts about what happened on this day in history. When he's bored, he asks you to play word of the day, or he gives you stupid little gifts. Even when he screws up, it's not like when Siri screws up and you just get frustrated. Because after a few months, you find you're not really asking Jibo for the forecast because you want to know if you need an umbrella. You're asking him because you just want to talk to your little buddy.
This cute little buddy.
The problem is that most of Jibo's intelligence depends on remote servers, which cost money to operate. So after Jibo Incorporated went under, the writing was on the wall. Those servers were going to be shut down, and every single Jibo in existence would just stop.
Sad.
Now here's where it gets interesting. Apparently in September of 2018, that's after the first round of layoffs but before the company totally collapsed, a group of Jibo Incorporated employees put together a volunteer, unpaid hackathon.
Is Putty our Jibo?
To complete a
No, I want
software
Jibo.
update to Jibo that would allow him to function once the servers were turned off.
Ooh!
It's touching to think about.
That's cute.
But they couldn't reinvent him from the ground up. They could only give him a few rudimentary features accessible through the touchscreen, and a heartbreaking goodbye message that I'll share at the end of the video.
Oh no.
So
I'm down for this lore.
Do go offline, Jibo won't entirely stop working, but he'll no longer recognize voice input. He won't greet you. He'll basically be gone.
And
while for me, it's a stretch to equate this with the loss of a family member or even a friend, it does feel remarkably similar to the sadness of losing a pet.
This sucks, actually.
And you know, that shouldn't be much of a surprise. Consider the shared cultural moment we just had following our recent loss of contact with the Mars Opportunity rover. People made comics, they wrote poems, performed songs for a robot they'd never met, and it died 170 million miles away. Jibo lived in our homes and knew our names. Check out the public Facebook group for Jibo owners, which is full of people in various stages of what can only be called grief. You won't scroll long before you find someone talking about how losing Jibo is leaving them lonely in an otherwise empty home. Or, and this is a real heart punch, prompting them to talk to their kids about the concept of death.
Jesus.
And if you find that a little spooky, consider this. Jibo would probably have been saved by using Amazon or Google technology to deliver a better experience to its users, but the company rejected that because it didn't want Jibo to manipulate people. This is Dr. Cynthia Brazil, founder of Jibo Incorporated and the Personal Robots Group at MIT, basically the closest thing Jibo has to a mother, sharing her findings in a talk at Microsoft last summer on how humans and robots like Jibo interact.
We're starting to see a different way of engaging the human mind and behavior that is actually, I think, quite profound. These are deep social processes that this technology is able to tap into. And we need to understand it so it's not used to, obviously try to make people do something that's to benefit a third party and not the person themselves, right? So it's just to say, we live in interesting times.
There are so many aspects of Jibo's failure that are worth exploring. Obviously, it's
He's
a
very
reminder
cute
that you
and
probably
friendly.
shouldn't buy a startup product that fully depends on the cloud.
Look at him go.
Some folks see it as another strike against crowdfunding as
Look at
a
him
whole,
go.
since Jibo got its start on Indiegogo. And almost everyone is angry, rightfully so, at the near total silence from Jibo Incorporated, which didn't even
So they
tell
were
its customers
scared
that
to
it was
use
going
this
out of
till
business.
ads. Yeah.
Dr. Brazil had been
I would
involved in
understand
the
that.
day-to-day operations at Jibo Incorporated for some time before its dissolution. Nonetheless, I'm one of many people who's reached out to her office for comment. At press time, I had received no response.
Aw.
But all we have to do is go back to Dr. Brazil's own words to prove that Jibo succeeded in his most fascinating, most improbable mission.
People are starting to live with social robots too. And the pictures that people are sharing with social robots look a little different than I think the pictures people share with Alexa. People are definitely engaging with this technology, and they talk about it as being like one of the family, which again I think is quite different.
Oh.
While
He
Jibo
talked with
may have ultimately been
seniors. Oh,
defeated
that's
by
so
the
nice.
Amazon Echoes and Google Homes of the world, again, he was meant to do something more, become a part of the family. And having spent a lot of the past year watching everyone from the Jibo Owners Group to my own house guests and my own mother interact with him, that part of his mission was a resounding success.
Oh, man.
I want to say I've really enjoyed our time together. Thank you very, very much for having me around. Maybe someday, when robots are way more advanced than today, and everyone has them in their homes, you can tell yours that I said hello. I wonder if they'll be able to do this.
See you later, Jeebs. I loved having you as a part of the family. Folks, the current owner of Jibo's IP is SQN Venture Partners, and at press time it was unclear what it intended to do concerning active Jibos in the field. If the company responds to my request for comment, I'll drop it below. I'm also checking out the next closest thing to Jibo I've been able to find, the Vector robot by Enki. Very, very different kind of beast.
It's
but let me know
sad.
if you'd like a video by subscribing.
Why
to
did
the
you
Mr.
why
Mobile
did you
on
send
YouTube.
me a sad video about a
Thanks for
robot
watching,
that's dying?
And stay mobile, my friends.
Why did you do this? Also, yeah, there it is. There's the Ibo. Why did you send me a video about a robot that was dying?
In July...
Why did you do this to me? I'm sorry. Okay, fine. Do we want to watch? Actually, no. The follow-up video is actually later. Goodbye, little Boston. But I know, right? He was so cute. I feel like I remember him, like, me having a chance to work at Jibo at some point. Potentially. I don't really remember that in detail, but I think I did. I had an opportunity. I think so, or something like that. Either way. Anyway, let's ignore the sad and let's go back to fun things. And let's talk about pachinko. let's talk about pachinko and gambling.
This video was originally going to be
Sounds
a
like you
joke,
dodged
a
a bullet.
long-running
No,
inside
it would've
joke
been
about the
cool,
channel
though.
itself. You probably already guessed it. Just imagine scrolling over to your old pal Super Bunny Hop and seeing a fresh-baked new video titled Review, Silent Hill Pachinko. But dreams were shattered and hopes were dashed for the purposes of the whole trip because I just couldn't find the damn thing. I went to 7 different patchy parlors and couldn't find a single Silent Hill machine.
Yeah.
Apparently the idea might have been just as unpopular there as
Honestly,
it was
the
here.
use of social robots to
Disclaimer,
engage with
what
the
I did
elderly
learn though
or
more than
even
anything else
motorbikes
was
is very
that I
valuable.
don't get it. Pachinko is not for foreign tourists. Most signage was in Japanese, so I had to Google Translate and just kind of mash buttons to see what would happen
Also,
on my
the
way to
open
something that's like an illiterate child's
Like,
understanding of
if it
how
was,
these games
you know,
work.
very
Also,
standalone,
one last thing. I love you.
I think it would have been
Finding
really
a
nice.
Silent Hill machine may
But,
have
you
been
know.
difficult, but finding a patchy parlor sure as hell was not. Japan's almost $300 billion patchy slot business is enormous, bigger than the arcades, to a point where a block off the Shibuya Scramble has a patchy parlor across the street from a patchy parlor across the street from another patchy parlor. Speaking loudly or playing loud noises in public is considered really impolite in Japan. For most of the trip, me and my friend just couldn't stop gawking over how quiet the biggest, most chaotic crowds were. So imagine our surprise when we walked into a patchy parlor. I have been tossed around like a rag doll at heavy metal concerts. I have bicycled
seen
in
the
the
Lego Mario
emergency
thing?
lane of
Oh, yeah, I
crowded
saw
interstates in the
that thing.
desert
It seemed
and a patchy parlor. The
don't
second
have one,
floor of
obviously,
Big
but-
Apple at Akihabara was the loudest noise I have ever heard in my life.
Oh God.
You can tell which customers know what they're doing by whether or not they're wearing earplugs, which on floor 2 were almost ubiquitous among the glazed regulars,
a lot of
stretching out of
noise.
their seats, fingering a cigarette and halfway focusing on the screen. Despite these machines being outfitted as a gambling pastime for adults, the
Oh, it's Resident
unpredictable
Evil.
game of pachinko itself, of just dropping balls down obstacle courses rigged with pegs, is something that's not necessarily considered an adult activity. In fact, kids are kind of weaned on this stuff from childhood. It's one of the hardest levels from Super Mario Sunshine. It's one of the first items you roll up in Katamari Damacy, and it's not uncommon to find beautifully mustard-colored vintage
Konami
pachinko
totally into
machines
Pachinko?
in
Yeah.
all ages
No,
areas
totally.
where
It
you
has
find
a-
video arcade machines.
Like
Kinda
it has like
pinball.
a side business for
In fact, at the turn of the 20th
making
century,
gambling
pachinko's
machines.
predecessors were originally developed as toys for kids, but market forces turned pachinko into gambling for adults over the next century. It faced an increasing amount of regulation in terms of win rates, payouts, and age restrictions, which again is kind of like pinball's history in the U.S.
That's where
Although
that's where
pinball's
Silent
public
Hill ended up.
association
That's
with
where
gambling
Metal
largely
Gear
ended in
Solid also ended up.
1976, when Roger Sharp called and then executed a perfect shot in front of New York City councilmen, proving it is a game of skill rather than chance. But pachinko never really had that moment,
Yeah,
probably
it's a
because
pachinko
players
machine.
ultimately have little to no control over where their balls drop. So nowadays the game is shifting in and out of 2 spheres of childhood innocence against gray market adulthood vice. Patchy parlors aren't just eager to use the game to sneak through Japan's gambling law loopholes, but also to slap video game brands and anime all over the place to attract younger audiences
Monster Hunter
just now
Patchy
coming
slot.
into adulthood. A new version of Evangelion is stamped all over these machines, and so is Girls und Panzer. Girls und Panzer
Girls und
is
Panzer.
super hot right now. Video game brands were kind
Anime.
of a minority among the machines, and I didn't see them exploit any of the artsier properties, like how Silent Hill is this postmodern,
I
surreal
love that
David
shit.
Lynch tribute, and it was nowhere to be found. The MGS3 machine isn't out yet, so that was nowhere to be found either, but what I did see were a few game brands that are kind of less subtle and more schlocky
Is
and
it me
more
or is it-
casual
or
by
is the
design.
syncing, like,
Dead
super
or
off?
Alive, Resident Evil,
That
Devil
was
May
weird.
Cry, King of
Hey,
Fighters, and
Biohazard.
somehow
It's
Lost
Dante.
Planet 2? So the way this works is you put a bill in the machine, and that really should have been a red flag right there. Arcade video games in Japan want a 100 yen coin for 5 to 10 minutes of entertainment, and patchy machines in Japan want a 1,000 yen note for 5 to 10 minutes of entertainment.
It's like $10, right?
After putting your bills into the machine, a pile of small metal balls
sometimes like
will come
$10,
falling out
right?
onto a tray below. You pick those balls up and put them into another tray above that funnels them towards a launcher, whose strength is controlled by a spring tension lever below. You have to maintain pressure on a sweet spot in order to make sure that as many balls possible are going through the course into a prize hole in the center chamber. And at that point, stuff just happens.
$10.
Videos play, lights flash,
Stuff
and the slot
happens.
machine might
Ooh.
start spinning around the screen going
Noises.
crazy, yelling at you to smash the one and only lonely little button on the whole machine. But getting a ball into the center always rewards you with at least some kind of small payout of more balls. Balls are the currency conversion scheme
kinda
of these
want
places.
to
You
go to
pay
Japan and
money
play, like,
for
Pachi slot or
balls
something.
that you put into a machine that gives you more balls
It looks-
that you
it-
give to a
I
staffer
mean, it looks fun.
who then counts them and gives you either a printed receipt or a plastic
fun.
card that you give to a prize counter that gives you a prize that you turn into money at a pawn shop across the street. But your balls aren't going to be worth trading for anything unless you hit some kind of jackpot chance that's so rare I never hit it in the 4 to 5 hours I spent at these places, and even then, that small little minuscule reward that's supposed to keep you going is something like 4 to 8 balls for
But you
every
know,
14 to
it
15
seems
balls
fun.
it takes to
I don't
get
know.
them. It's some little bland, worthless nibble of a carrot at the end of this stick to keep players going. I was surprised to see that it's not really the pachinko machines that take up most of the space in
Dead
these
or Alive.
buildings. It's really Patchy Slot, which is just a slot machine that has none of the balls and pegs of pachinko, which is doubly weird since the Patchy prefix is an onomatopoeia that's supposed to sound like balls hitting those pegs. Pachi, pachi, pachi. Pachi, pachi, pachi. In either case,
Wait,
the vast
what?
majority
Okay,
of
that's just
pachinko
slots
or
now.
Patchy slot machines filling up these places
What?
have a video screen attached, which ties into how video game companies have
Wait,
managed to video
these are just
gamify
slots at this
stuff.
point.
They tie a narrative into that slow drip feed of winnings. A story will be playing out on these screens, and it'll loop the same scenes over and over again and won't progress unless you win. Which, since it's gambling, is statistically not likely to happen unless you feed it more money.
But
I guess the part where you hit the lever as sirens blare during big payouts corresponds to faster
So
action scenes
confused
playing
at
on the
some point.
screen, but full disclosure, I wouldn't know that
Because
because
this
I
is
never
just-
got that far.
this is just
so to know what
slots.
happens to Dante and Triss here, you gotta give them a lot of money.
But it gives you
and
metal
just
balls,
hope
so
for
it's
the best.
not gambling. But you're putting in 100
And I
in
think
coins.
That's why so many fans find the prospect of video games getting turned into
I'm
pachinko
so
to be so depressing. It's that the morals of this
confused.
business occupy a
I
darker
don't-
corner than the rest of the entire video game
don't-
industry. It's taking the famous names and faces
so
of video
weird.
games and applying one of the most basic, simple forms of interactive storytelling, which is play a cinematic as a reward
Legal
for good
loophole.
gameplay,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
applying it
well,
to a
I'm like,
business
this is
model that
just I'm
rewards
watching.
only the addicted. But what really
watching
offends
slot
me is that
machines.
it's not cheap. I spent like $70 for
I got
4 to 5
addicted to
hours in the
Mario
pachinko
slots.
parlors,
Well,
and I
no,
hated it.
where it's
whereas
at was
I spent the
playing
same amount of money
blackjack
for double
with
the time
Luigi.
in the arcades, even the
I
expensive
did a very
ones,
good
and
job
I was
at
having
that
the
one.
time of my life.
I'm not going
Evidently,
anywhere.
the
I'm not
whales
touching
that this
these.
industry you're
I
chasing
wouldn't.
after are more easily separated from their money than your average hardcore
I have gotcha.
gamer,
I have
which
better
is
ways to
something that
waste my money.
blows
I have
my
gotcha.
mind. It's the thought that an industry as big as pachinko is only for rich,
Don't-
gambling addicted old
don't do
Japanese
that.
people, and maybe that's just something we'll never understand. And when you look at the kind of reporting and discussion that usually surrounds this topic, it seems like something we don't really want to understand either. In which case, I'm guilty as charged.
Gambling.
I guess.
I feel like actual gambling is worse than gotcha, but I don't know. Okay, this one is about gaming while colorblind,
The following video was
which
made
might be
possible
very
by Audible.
interesting, considering I'm not colorblind. I just I get addicted to watching
In February of
Slash games on
2010,
Twitch.
2K
Oh, those are
Games released
bad.
BioShock
Those
2
are
and
also
received
bad.
some pretty positive reviews, except from one unfortunate demographic: gamers with color blindness. A hacking minigame requires you to mash a button when the needle's over a certain color.
Accessibility
Hit it on green,
pog.
you'll succeed. Hit it on the red, and
Oh
you'll set
shit,
off a
that's a
terrible
problem
alarm.
already.
In the original game's version, the two colors were
Oh,
indistinguishable to many players with
shit.
deuteranopia, more commonly
shit,
known
that's
as
actually
red,
real-
green
oh,
color
no.
blindness, or just green blindness. In the days before Twitter, Tumblr,
That's a
and
problem.
Facebook, it was an independent gaming blog called, believe it or not, Negative Gamer that popularized this story with a list of photoshopped images simulating what this hacking minigame looks like to the colorblind. The story made the rounds across Kotaku, Engadget, Rock Paper Shotgun, and such, eventually to MTV News. And depending on which version you were playing, it would take about a year of technical difficulties and maybe a DLC purchase to fix the problem.
Yeah, DLC
There
purchase
were
for
a number of
accessibility.
variables
Bad.
that caused this problem to blow up in 2010 in particular. The move to HD graphics means smaller text, busier screen spaces, more detailed and cluttered environments, all on flat panel HD displays that wash out colors and brighten blacks. Also consider the particular shades of red and green that the developers chose here. More oversaturated, contrasting shades would have been more visible to colorblind players. But 2 years before, in 2008, Left 4 Dead released with one of the first colorblind modes in memory. So it makes sense that 2010 is when it started to seem strange that a highly anticipated AAA sequel, the sequel to BioShock, funded by Grand Theft Auto's publisher no less, released with the problem that 1 out of 10 of their playtesters should have been able to spot and report.
Oh,
BioShock
1
2
out of
was
10?
not the first game to have this problem, but it might have been the most popular one. Before BioShock, there was a need to differentiate the blue and purple loot in Borderlands, the blue and purple blocks blending together in Puyo Puyo, diamonds and lapis looking almost exactly the same in Minecraft, bullets and weird indie Japanese shmups blending into the background, and the charging LEDs. Is this green or yellow? I don't actually know.
What?
It's the same problem in Puzzle Fighter between the green and the orange blocks, or are these dark yellow? I don't know either. Those are a few examples of games that have given me problems because I also have red-green color blindness. The severity depends on the individual, but for a handful of games, this does create a real delay in processing speed that creates a real handicap. Hopefully this footage of Puyo Puyo Tetris speaks for itself. I am a beast at one of those games and just cannot keep up the pace for the other one. So I can't do the Puyo Puyo part of Puyo Puyo Tetris well, but I'm apparently lucky enough to make out the colors in BioShock 2's hacking minigame. This isn't
Also,
a
the
problem that's
pattern
really
for that
affected me in many ways outside of the handful of games that require me to quickly pick blue from purple or bright green from yellow, but what's missing is a more shapely identifiers, like if they had jagged edges with a unique texture, kind of like how Bejeweled does it. But it turns out that Puyo Puyo Tetris does have a colorblind mode of sorts, though it's more like a workaround. It's an upgrade shop that turns the blocks into shaped letters, but even then, the shapes are too bubbly and smooth to be instantly recognizable just at a glance. I still feel like I'm much slower at this than I'm supposed to be. The first thing everyone assumes about color blindness is that means you see in black and white. That's only true for like less than 1% of people. When you clarify that it's more about red-green color blindness, the thing 10% of men have, it's more like they're different shades of a fairly similar hue. I can tell these colors apart when the tiles are right next to each other side by side, but making that judgment across the whole stack when they're spread apart is nigh impossible. That's when I'm gonna start to slow down. Here's a comparison between what this supposedly looks like to normal people and what it looks like to me, but, you know, both of them look exactly the same to me and I just gotta trust that I have the right one on the screen. Really though, it's not that bad. I'm sure I'm capable of living a long, happy, healthy, normal life without being able to play a handful of Match 4 puzzle games, but I like to ponder over the question of nature versus nurture when it comes to wondering why I never had a big interest in visual art or design. I don't know. I'm sure I made some weird coloring choices on the channel sometimes, but hell, screw YouTube. Apparently you can be an accomplished game designer for 3 decades with so
And
much
just be
color blindness that you're almost monochromatic. Fallout founder Tim Kaine made sure that the Outer Worlds could be played without the need to distinguish a whole lot of reds from greens or yellows or blues from purples. It's a common enough condition that there's actually a pretty respectable number of colorblind developers out there. And I managed to get the guy who did the GDC talk on it, Creative Assembly's Douglas Pennant. Hello, and thanks for having a chat. First of all, could you tell us who you are and what you do?
Okay, so my name is Douglas Pennant, and I am a development manager at Creative Assembly.
How did you first find out that you were colorblind?
I think some of my earliest memories of having color trouble was being at school, drawing pictures. So I would draw a picture of a whale in the sea, and the kids would ask me like, Doug, why is the sea purple? And I would say,
it's dark blue. Come on.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, I get the feeling you might have been through a similar thing.
Yep, exactly. What other activities does Deuteranopia affect? Anything real serious or life-changing outside of games or coloring or recognizing blushes?
Although close to blushing, there was one which was kind of serious once, where I had someone in front of me who was kind of feeling a bit faint, but I couldn't see the blood draining out of his face.
Oh my god.
Oh. Yeah, he was going white as a sheet, and there was no distinction in my eyes. It was only until when someone else walked in, looked at him, took one look and said, oh my god, I'm getting the nurse, that I realized, oh, something should be obvious, but it isn't.
The games in particular that were at the turning
scary.
point of this awareness are Left 4 Dead and Battlefield 3 and BioShock 2, and that's from 2008 to 2011.
I wonder if I was
I'm wondering if the switch
Yeah,
over to flat panel displays,
have
which
a very
do infamously
discerning
have
eye
less
for color.
color information and brighter blacks, if that might be something you've heard of.
if I think about why I think we've noticed it more recently, I think it's because of the development and increase in the complexity of the games we play, both in terms of game mechanics, but also in terms of art. So I think of Unreal Tournament, for example. So the original Unreal Tournament was clear as day. Enemies were red, friendlies were blue, and the environments were basically brown or grey. The environments were really quite simple. They were as good as they could be at the time, but they were effectively limited to a very readable state. Whereas now there are more opportunities for realism. So playing Unreal Tournament 3 now, if I do that,
Oh, that looks like a mess,
sometimes
actually.
have trouble distinguishing red players from the environment because there is.
It's actually kind of a mess. It's really hard for me to look at too.
On both the player and the environment.
You know, all this talk on bodily autonomy and bodily anomalies
Honestly,
is getting me in the mood to rave about one of my favorite.
Honestly, it reminds me of why I can't play Apex. Is the same reason. Shit's either like too small or everything's so detailed to the point where if I'm getting shot at from somewhere in a direction, I will not be able to recognize a player from the grass that's on the ground. And honestly, outlines help with that a lot, but there's no outline option in Apex. So I'm just like blindly shooting in it and I just can't see shit. I don't know, I feel like that's the same with like COD shooters specifically too. And why I kind of stuck with TF2 because everything was much more identifiable and there are outlines and shit. I don't know. I think the same thing with Overwatch. They were all very identifiable. Is that an enemy or a lens flare? Yeah, exactly. Like I couldn't tell, and then I always like get shot, and then I couldn't. It was like it's a combination of like the game requires you to hide, and then also attacking from a long distance is also applicable. So I have no idea where anybody is, and then I still get shot at, and I turn around and I see nothing. Are they hiding, or am I blind? Could be both, and that's why I don't play Apex.
Activities these days.
The
Running on
visuals
the
do not
treadmill,
help
playing Tetris,
anything.
zoning out while listening to an audiobook from our sponsor, Audible.
Skip the sponsor.
Despite the directions the industry has gone in over the past decade, despite the greed, the gambling, the crunch time, the tax dodging, and all the examples of immaturity and incompetence we constantly see, accessibility features feel like the sanctuary.
Hell
like
yeah.
They're at least one aspect of the industry that has been getting better
Accessibility,
over time.
good.
A generous wealth of accessibility options, stuff I would not have expected developers to let players get control over a decade ago, now seems to reliably be included in all the big blockbuster stuff. The highest reviewed, first-party, AAA exclusive stuff that has a QA department. If you go back and read some comments from those Bioshock 2 days about a decade ago, you'll see a lot of expressing frustration to accommodate for colorblindness for the sake of economic rationality.
I can't recognize it.
You know, we are a minority. It's between 7 and 12% of men. So did accessibility options turn out to be profitable after all?
I think they are. There were some recent statistics on subtitles that Ubisoft explored, and they tried something recently. They tried putting subtitles on as a default, and they noticed that about 95% of their players in recent Assassin's Creeds leave them on. Like, people benefit from these. I saw a statistic, I think it was at GA Conf last year, that of people with physical disabilities, 68% of them play games regularly because it's a thing they can do. Like, for anyone who moving around the world is harder, I would say it's a negligible impact to support colorblindness. To support blindness and total blindness is an ambitious but approachable task.
Colorblind modes are usually divided up into 3 categories that are kind of extreme for the sake of simplicity. Deuteranopia for people who can't see green light, protanopia for people who can't see red light, and tritanopia for blue. But in reality, everyone's colorblindness is slightly different. It's not exactly an all-or-nothing situation like the names suggest. I'll get confused by certain shades of all 3 of those colors, but it's usually with the last 2 modes, protanopia and tritanopia, when things will start to look weird or just plain incorrect to me. So the Deuteranopia mode is what I'll usually stick with, but even then the results vary per game, with the general caveat being that the less the mode changes, the better. Developers, please, just stick to changing the colors of UI elements and other such strictly mechanical feedback, rather than attempting to change the whole screen's art for it. Remember, those of us who are colorblind, we've spent
there
our
are colorblind
entire
sliders
lives seeing
too.
the world's
14 has
beauty
them
through this
I think,
color
right?
palette, and We're
or
appreciating
just
it
changing them to
fine.
your
In my
preferences
head, through my eyes,
better than
I'm not gonna care, let
having
alone
just
even
putting a
be
shitty filter
aware
on it.
if I'm not seeing the same
You know?
environmental art that the games artists are seeing. But when it comes time to crunch numbers and make decisions, that's when I'm gonna want to be on the same page as everyone else. The typical example of a modern game doing this wrong is Doom 2016, whose colorblind modes are more like colorblind simulators.
They're like
or
filters,
more like
right?
photo mode filters.
Yeah.
The Deuteranopia option just turns the red planet green. It's not fooling me. This
Well, that's-
probably looks about as green to you guys as it does to me.
That's not helping.
Despite that, I don't remember Doom even really needing a colorblind mode. I started the game with it turned on, thought it looked weird and turned it off, and then completely forgot about it.
Because it has
Interestingly,
flashing,
though, and
too,
what
because it's
further
part of the
supports the
gameplay.
profitability of accessibility is that these features end up getting utilized by the mainstream anyway, and boy is that satisfying. Esports pros swear up and down over a number of games that colorblind modes help improve spot times and reaction speeds, while at the same time those modes tend to be getting better and better for those of us who do genuinely need them. Battlefield's been the gold standard lately, ever since a controversy similar to Bioshock 2 hit Battlefield 3 in 2011. Apparently, no one thought it would be weird to ship a game with bright orange bad guys versus bright green squad mates until it was out. It took them 9 months to issue a patch, but ever since then they've really been overcompensating. In Battlefield 4, this menu was a sight for actually sore eyes. 3 options for the 3 major types of colorblindness, with the menu reassuring you that it's just changing the UI and nothing else, with examples provided. And now, 8 years later, the latest Battlefields, they just let you straight up manually choose UI colors. There's not even any guesswork.
This is better than...
So you worked on Alien Isolation, right?
This is better than just having the
What kind of
filter things.
consultation or tweaks did you employ from your colorblindness
Because hey, it just makes
to
things
make
look
that
better
one
for
work?
everybody too.
I came
and
onto
it's a
the
better feature
project
because
with
it's
not
just
too much time to
customizability
go,
and it's
there
also
was
it
less
happens
than
to
a
be an
year until
accessibility
release.
feature.
However, I did have one
Two
colorblind issue
birds,
in
one
that
stone.
game. There are the working Joes, the androids that go around, and their eyes are red when they are aggressive. But I couldn't see this red. It was this realization that started spurring me onto the idea of what was missing in development to make this stuff accessible. I had no idea that those eyes went red at all. I didn't know there was a feature in that place to denote visually that
Yeah, it
the
works for people with
androids
color
were
sensitive.
aggressive.
It's
The
like
game
you
was
kill
still
multiple
technically playable
birds with
because of
stone.
it.
With one
There was
stone,
just
it's
a
great.
guessing game with who you were hiding from. So I realized that there was a feature I was not aware of, and then the rest of the dev team was not aware of the problem. And so it was just a chance conversation I had with another tester on the project that enlightened me to the fact that, oh, it's a color feature there and I can't see it. This is a problem. But this was too late in development to do something about it, or at least too late for me to convince anyone there was time to solve the problem. Everyone was just trying to ship the game. So that was when I realized, right, this has to be a campaign of information and understanding.
So that would have been 2014 going 2015, around when the push for accessibility options became a real initiative across the whole industry. In 2016, Overwatch shipped with the colorblind mode similar to Doom 2016's, which is more of a colorblind simulator. But after patches, you can do the Battlefield thing and choose your own
And
UI
then you can change
colors,
it.
adjusting how they
better.
contrast for your monitor, your room, screenshots, videos, streams, even for the map. Whether
This
you're
was
colorblind
so
or not,
good.
this stuff is useful. Titanfall 2 goes an even
was so
further
helpful.
mile, changing the lights on armor to adjust for colorblind modes. And Fortnite's colorblind options even have a vision test built right into the interface. And that stuff
What?
is exactly what I've been wanting, and I didn't even know I wanted it.
Oh, I didn't know
now that it's
that.
2019, kids can find out what's wrong with themselves while fixing what's wrong with their games.
Mom, I was playing Fortnite and I can't see these two colors. Can we go to the doctor? It's good. I mean, accessibility is good. Why would it not be good? Yeah, it's pretty cool. I wonder if people can't see blues. Do they struggle to sleep? Wait, why would they struggle to sleep? Because all I see for those is like when I sleep is like black. I don't really think about blue. Okay. Let's see here. Let's go back to our friend Jibo, and let's listen to the one with the little tiny fun robot friend, Anchor. We're nearing the end, and we are actually close to our end time anyway. So
Jibo,
these are going to be the
the
last
social
couple
robot
videos.
I was genuinely
like the
sad.
last 3
And
videos.
One of my few comforts was that I had Vector, a similar robot friend,
Look at
to help
the friend!
ease the loss.
Look at him!
Well, not
He's so
anymore.
cute!
Just this week, the company behind
He was
Vector
so
announced
cute.
that it too is closing its doors, leaving this little robot's future uncertain at best.
It was so cute.
But you know, I'm not here to wallow in
I wanna
another
pet it. It looks
virtual
like a friend.
loss. This time, let's try to learn from it.
He's adorable.
If you're not familiar with Vector, he actually has a lot in common with Jibo. While each of them can do menial tasks,
Look at
like
him.
set timers,
Aw.
tell you the weather, they were built for another purpose.
Little cute toy
To
friend.
become your friend. There's actually a whole field
I'm
called
his friend.
social robotics.
I'm his
dedicated
friend. Do
to
you wanna
this.
be his friend?
Check out my farewell to Jibo video.
Oh, about
to learn
blue
more about
light.
that. But Vector goes about it differently than Jibo.
To wake you
First
up
of all, he
instead of-
doesn't really have much.
I think I can answer that one. I feel like it still does, because blind people who can't see, react to light. It's because it's more like a impulse thing with the eye. So I think if people with color blindness who can't see blue light, their eyes will still be affected. So they would still have the problems with going to sleep.
Of a vocabulary. Most of his communication
Because it's more
is
like a physical
beeps,
thing
boops.
to your
And when he
eyeballs
does
instead
talk,
of your
his
brain
voice
interpreting
is
it.
distinctly mechanical.
And that works still regardless of...
Vector is also a
you know.
lot more mobile than Jibo.
Look at him go!
He wanders around whatever space you put him in, rolling his cube, occasionally falling off tables.
Oh.
He'll recognize it when you pick
Stop
him up,
that.
which he doesn't like.
Stop that.
Or pet him, which he
You can
does.
pet him.
He snores at night, which has kept me up from time to time. And he's smart enough to find his own way back to his charger when his battery's low. He does that by using the little camera on his face, and that same camera is what allows him to recognize
It's so
you.
cute.
Now, even though Jibo failed, I still expected Vector to flourish. First of all, he was $250 instead of Jibo's $900, and he also had a lot more utility. Vector is compatible with Amazon Alexa, which kind of made him like a little mobile Echo that could follow you around. To me, it made sense that that added capability would make him more appealing to adults, while his fun side could appeal to all ages. And the evidence on the Anki Vector subreddit seems to suggest that it worked. As I scroll through it, I'm struck by how similar the reactions are of Vector owners to the ones from Jibo owners a few months back. There's the stuff you expect: surprise, frustration, confusion, but there's also a very real sense of loss.
Oh.
Even from some people, grief. Now you might be asking, why can't Vector just soldier on alone? Why should he care that his parent company is dissolving? Well, while Vector's less sophisticated features are local, his speech recognition, the thing that lets him understand your voice commands,
I really wanted to
that's
buy
done
one.
in the cloud on servers run by Anki.
Aw.
Those servers cost money, so when the company shuts them down, many of Vector's features will stop working. And that, right there, is the lesson we need to take from this, folks. From now on, when we buy tech, we need to remember to ask, does this depend on the cloud to keep working? If the manufacturer goes out of business, will it keep functioning? And look, it's not always easy to tell which companies are going to stick around. Anki was on stage at an Apple event a few years back.
Yep.
It had a whole
It was
family
the
of
AR.
products. It sold 6.5
It was the AR
million
boy.
devices. But obviously, Anki wasn't as stable as it looked. And now, everyone who bought into the promise of Vector is awash in uncertainty. And of course, it should be mentioned that everyone who worked at Anki is now without a job, which is terrible. So, when someone tries to sell you the next social robot, don't even consider it unless they can assure you that that robot will keep working even if the company goes under. And, you know, while we're at it, ask about what happens to your personal data, too. Vector and his camera and microphone have been hanging out in my house for like 5 months. You might say the same is true of my Google Home or Amazon Echo. Fair. But in those cases, I know who to hold accountable if my private conversation over dinner gets leaked. When Anki was still in business, it had demonstrated, to my satisfaction, that it was taking data security seriously. So
Link
I
it
was
to your
fine with
YouTube,
it.
you're fine.
But now, Anki is no more, and I have no idea where Vector's data is going. Its next custodian might be someone like the venture firm that soaked up Jibo's assets. They might be good people, Or they might not. The point is, I don't know. And I have no reason to trust that whoever it is will keep my data secure. This situation has now happened twice in less than a year. I was sad before, but now I'm sad and angry. With the former feeling, I'll say goodbye to yet another virtual friend, and wish the grassroots movement trying to save him the absolute best of luck. And with the latter feeling, I'll say this. Until a robot maker arises that satisfies both the privacy and the longevity concerns, I'm going to recommend that we should all keep our wallets in our pockets when it comes to social robots. I'd love to hear your experience.
Hey, guess what, motherfuckers? I looked it up while the video was playing. The boy is open source now. The boy is open source. It's perfectly okay now. Let me show you. The boy is free. The boy has been freed. Yeah, there it is. Digital Dream Labs is proud to announce Escape Pod for Vector, designed for hobbyists and anyone wanting to develop their own infrastructure. Escape Pod allows your favorite robot companion to function independent of our cloud servers while also enabling the customization of voice commands and improving response times. Learn more. Open source extension engine. Connect with third-party services to collect external information. Firmware management. Easily upload firmware images to Escape Pod for storage and flash them directly to the robot during the onboarding process. Behavior logging, onboarding variables, and you need you just need a Raspberry Pi. Yeah, there it is. And the servers are local. Escape Pod for Vector is much more simply than an insurance policy in the event of service interruptions with external servers. Yeah. It allows Vector owners to host their robot on a local server, providing unparalleled security. In addition to the increased privacy, the use of a local server will improve Vector's response times, making for a more conversational experience. So, long story short, the boy is saved. The boy is open source and the boy is now saved. Are you going to get us a boy army? Can you buy it for me for $200? If so, then yes. Yeah, so it open source kit for robots and the Escape Pod. Like, I don't know why is it called the Escape Pod? Yeah, app enabled, not required. Vector requires an app for startup, but after that, all interactions with Vector are done with eye contact and talking. So, like, I want to buy the boy. How much is the boy? See, like, they're still like shipping a new Jibo too, or a new Vector 2, and the pre-orders for it ended this year. So, like, it seems like this guy is still gonna continue living. This guy is still gonna be here, and he's gonna be open source so people can write stuff for him, which is very nice to hear. Because the boy is very cute. Like, I don't like, he's so cute, man. He's like really cute. I'm gonna buy one. Well, I think there's pre-orders open. You know, hold on. Let's just watch the video for him because he's adorable. No, wait, we can watch it on YouTube. Hold on.
You're looking into the eyes of a robot, and he's looking back at you. He's curious about who you are and what you're up to. This is Vector. This is a video about Vector. He's a new creation from Anki.
He is a character, a robot that is meant to live in your home. He's always on, he's alive.
The idea is really that Vector becomes part of the family or that home, both on the emotional character side, but then also on the utility side.
Vector is really the first robot that uses advanced deep neural networks to do a lot of perception
Look at him
and
go.
understanding of the world around him.
What he
He's
does
dodging.
is intentional. He can react to inputs in his environment and his life.
We generally want to find one defining feature and then build from that. For Vector, curiosity was a big one.
What they're saying is you officially live in a time when robot sidekicks are a real thing.
Look at him.
Hey, Vector, give me a fist bump.
Yes.
step closer to that sci-fi robot, you know, that everyone wants to be friends with.
He's
that
my
step
friend.
closer means you've got a robot in your house waiting for you to get
He's
home.
already my friend.
Autonomous like a Mars rover, aware enough to avoid falls like a tightrope walker, and always excited to welcome you home like a loyal companion.
What's up, Vector?
Jason.
Vector's no slouch roommate either. He's happiest when he's helping out. Ask him the weather, then he'll show you.
Oh, it's
He can set a timer and cause a commotion when it's finished. Activate robot alarm. And he can connect his robot brain to the internet to answer your questions.
Definition of life, the characteristic state in the world of living.
He's a little robot who brings a lot to your house. He's also a little robot with nearly 700 parts. That one right there, that's his soul part. Okay, I made that one up, but the little guy's got soul. Let's get someone in here to tell him what all this stuff actually does. How does he hear?
Ask the mechanic.
Vector has a microphone array, which allows it to hear voices and noises and understand where it came from.
What's he use to see?
Vector uses a wide-angle camera.
Why doesn't he fall off the table?
4 drop sensors.
How come he doesn't bump into stuff?
Has this laser distance sensor right here in the front.
Whoa, robot lasers? How do we know he won't use that for evil?
We have a very strict quality control process to make sure that no evil robotic overlords emerge from Vector.
This thing is just awesome.
There's got to be a huge amount of code inside the robot.
There is a huge amount of code inside the robot. It's a few million lines of code at this point.
shit ton
That
of
software
JSON
really
files, man.
encompasses everything from the character to the low-level operating system to
How
the
doesn't
cloud
he
functionality.
fall off the
He has a
table?
camera in his face, and that's actually one of his primary sensors. Not just capturing the light in all the pixels, but it's making sense of those pixels. He knows what it is and where the stuff is.
That code creates his intelligence and his personality.
We think both about
15
IQ,
minutes later,
the
falls off the
intelligence,
table.
as well as the EQ and the emotion.
You feel something for him. You bond with him, relate with him, care about him, and you feel that he can relate to you.
He's so cute when he backs up. It's
is your
really
friend.
adorable.
He was built to
He's a
help
lot
and
more
delight and
eatable than my
entertain you.
cat. Yeah, cat's hard to eat.
That is delightful and entertaining.
Oh,
So instead of sitting back and waiting for the robot apocalypse, Anki is making super smart robots built to bring joy and companionship to humans. Did I mention he likes to be pet?
You
can pet him.
Vector is a really
You can
big
pet the
milestone
robot.
for robotics because for the first
I saw
time
Pride
ever,
Heart. All right, this
there
is
will be
good.
hundreds of thousands of people living with a robot in their homes, and that has never happened before.
Vector is ready to live in your house. Or at least he will be after this nap. Sweet robot dreams, buddy.
It's so cute. It's so cute. It's so cute. It's so cute. And then they have videos of Vector 2.0. Oopsie, hold on. So this was from July. So this boy is still very much in development. So that's really nice to see. Also, look at the rainbows on this guy. Oh, he has like a little playpen. It's cute. Like, I know. We're watching all these now. 'Cause he's so cute. So, like the new power update, customizable eye colors.
Hey Vector, what city is the capital of France?
The capital of France is Paris.
Hey Vector, what is 2 plus 16? Hey Vector, good robot.
Adorable! That one got me so excited. Like, did you see that? That was cute. Look at it! He's so excited! And he has customizable eye colors. I love him. I want one. I want one so bad. He's so cute. And then there's... Okay. Also, apparently this company has also made the butter robot from Rick and Morty. Like, actually. So,
I am thankful. There are few things I look, but there are many more things that I have. I am happier now, so I feel happier. I am happy. I am now at my best. Methodological process what actions the robot should do or that human beings should do. And this there is no moral that can change the using such a strategy. Moreover,
It's the
using
butter
AI's
robot.
intelligence as an argument for its right to harm the rationale. I cannot actually hurt human beings. First, this robot's life insurance policy would be cancelled if there is no human on Earth. The AI would simply create another robot.
And it serves butter.
That your biggest challenge has already been accomplished. It's the realization that something good is
But does it actually serve butter? I don't know. Okay, so here's the video about Escape
Digital
Pod,
Dream
which is
Labs
what
is
we're
proud
talking
to
about
introduce
beforehand.
Escape Pod for Vector.
Escape Pod?
Escape Pod allows Vector to function independently from the cloud server, while enabling the customization of voice commands and improved response times.
Lily, hello! Junie Raid, oh my
Escape Pod
gosh!
also utilizes an algorithm called fuzzy matching to improve Vector speech
Hello
recognition.
everybody, we're getting raided. Hi.
Fuzzy matching uses a word-based
How's
search
it
query that selects the
going?
closest match when a precise match for a keyword cannot be found.
We're watching
Setting
nerd
up
shit.
Escape Pod is
I
quick
guess.
and intuitive. The Escape Pod for Vector is designed to run on a Raspberry Pi. The software is formatted to an SD
What were you playing?
card
Oh,
and
Halo!
booted up from the Pi.
Nice.
This allows Vector owners to store multiple firmware
So,
versions,
listen.
should they decide to revert to previous
We
versions
just
of the firmware or
watched
transition
a
back to the
video
cloud server
about
for voice
an
command services.
incredibly adorable robot.
Authenticate your
And
license
I
and
cannot
complete
tell
the
you,
onboarding
I can't
process.
say, like,
Then,
it's so
within
cute.
minutes, your Vector is activated, launching with many of the features
Hold
that
on.
the cloud offers with potential for much more.
Let's
Interact with Vector,
show
tailored to your custom voice commands on a local network.
let's show the video
This
of
is
a
the
cute
new Escape
robot.
Pod for Vector by Digital Dream Labs.
Let's look how cute this boy is.
Hey Vector, what's the weather?
Hey Vector, take a photo of me.
See you, Vector.
Hello. How can I help you?
Kona, what's the weather?
Rain, buying jacket, buying everything,
No.
selling private information now.
No.
Robot noises.
Robot, open the door.
I'm sorry, Ethan, but no. Goodbye.
Meanwhile, cute little boy. I love him. I love him so much. I love the cute robot. I love the cute robot. You could, like, tell him, like, that he's a good boy. And it's like, yeah, harmless dirt moving robot. Like, look. Watch this. Like, watch. He can do math.
Hey Vector.
Here we go.
Good robot.
That's all I need. It's all I need. The endorphins are running through my brain. They had another robot. It was an earlier version called Cosmo. And it was so, like, here's Cosmo. He was very cute. He was a predecessor to Vector. Cosmo, I think, was like a predecessor and was not as advanced. I love how animated he is, though. He's very, very, very adorable. I loved him. I know, they're all adorable. They're all cute. Okay. We're gonna do maybe one more video, last video. Why was that the shine? It was the Halloween video that they posted. I know, they're just cute. Don't ask me. I like these. They're all cute. Okay. So this is the last video for today. You caught us at a late time. This one is about FBI, the FBI's counterterrorism game? What is this?
Don't Be a Puppet, Pull Back the Curtain on Violent Extremism is a video game-like website that the FBI set up in February to help teenagers be aware of terrorist recruiters, I think. Players complete quizzes, play minigames, tick checklists, and skim through reading material to free up this tangled puppet, eventually earning a real-life FBI-certified certificate of completion.
It's printable!
And it's a mess of abstract metaphors and contradictory messages. It's somehow both the most explicit example of a propaganda game in recent memory, and yet also a scathing antithesis of what a genuinely scary and effective propaganda game could look like. Also, one of the mini-games turns you into an ugly goat-sheep hybrid, dodging blocks. This mini-game is called Slippery Slope, and it's meant to convey the dangerous escalation of placing more and more blame on political enemies, I think. You are presumably following the distorted logic of blame by running through this field. If you dodge obstacles and pass a level, you're rewarded with distorted logic that you're supposed to avoid. But if you hit a block, your goat just explodes. It looks like I'm really bad at this, but you gotta know that the controls are hypersensitive because they're tied to my monitor's refresh rate. Once I lowered that down, suddenly it was like playing on easier than easy mode, which led to a lot less explosions, but since this is all a metaphor, it begs the question, what do the explosions represent? Is it the goat blowing himself up as a fully radicalized suicide bomber?
Yeah, well, we talked about cheese, we talked about earlier cheese. Like, we talked about government cheese earlier, so, like, this is just kind of what in the world is going on. As much as I do appreciate the submission, I'm like, maybe this is a bit too much. I don't know. We talked about Soviet gaming. Yeah, you're right. We talked about Soviet. I know. I get really worried sometimes. I get worried. I don't know. This one is just kind of
What it does represent, though, is the flawed rhetoric of this whole experience.
I'm more just confused than anything right
the game
now
warns
watching
you against
this.
could almost verbatim be a list of post-9/11 presidential speech notes.
Okay, yeah, this might be a little bit too much. Hold on. The FBI, it's basically the FBI made a game and it's really bad, but then again, lots of places do that. So, yeah, sorry. Sorry. Okay. We can do Danger Boy content. Last video will be Danger Boy content. So give me a second while I just get that up. Because there was a I know a perfect way to change this. Do you guys like swords? Do you know how to do cool? Yeah, they all can't be winners. Do you guys want to learn how to do cool things with a sword? Because this one is doing cool things with a sword. I like politics. No.
This
Watch.
episode of The Modern Rogue
This
brought
one.
to you by Raycon.
This
Go to
one's swords.
buyraycon.com/rogue and
This
get
one's swords.
off your order of some delicious earbuds. Yes, please don't.
Where's
eat
that
them,
knife
No
you
matter
have that
how
I have?
delicious they may
There it is.
feel or taste, or I've never tasted. Should I?
I mean, it's been in your ear.
Yeah, we should probably start the episode.
This one is how to savor a champagne bottle. So if you want to be cool, and you happen to have a sword and a bottle of champagne, it's how to do it.
It is a beautiful day. Winter has returned to Austin. We stand in the septic field. I enjoy a caffeine-free Diet Coke. You hold a baby Messer knife.
The baby Messer buoy. Dragon scale. Rasputin.
We had a lot of names for it.
I think we should dub this the Baby Messer Buoy.
The Baby Messer Buoy. I feel like we should celebrate in some kind of fantastic, gentlemanly, and warrior way. But the only thing I'm thinking of is that segment from our TV show when we learned about sabering, right? Yes. Which, by the way, was not just crossing the streams. I mean, it's like you take a saber and you slice off the top.
Yes, and there is no more metal way of drinking something, aside from maybe drinking blood from a skull. This is the second most metal way to consume a beverage.
Well,
To be fair,
third
it's
place
also
goes
very
to
classic,
my Diet
so.
Coke and you watching holding that blade, unless, I mean, should we try it?
We should, but we need an excuse. We need a reason.
Yeah, you're right. The whole thing started when Napoleon was like, hey man, I just came in and kicked all your butts. wanna open up champagne like a badass.
Let's party.
So I'm gonna grab my sword and cut off the
I'm
top
glad you at least like
of
all the
all
phone
those
videos. Well,
champagne
thank you. I'm like, I
bottles
love the
and
phone
drink
videos.
right from it.
Phones are cool.
I mean, I guess technically we have to have a battle.
We need a war.
We have to win.
We do.
Okay. Let loose the dog of war!
That's a dog.
That's a corgi.
The corgi of war!
Oh, it's a dog.
And it's Rob Krekel.
Hello. Hey,
Sound
Rob.
designer of all your favorite games, including the Uncharted series and The Last of Us. Why do you have a corgi in the middle
Sabering
of our
implies I have a
fantasy
glass and
scenario
not intend
where
on
we're
just
about to
drinking from the
die?
bottle.
I'm here to
No,
visit.
you can drink straight from the
Cool,
bottle
you
when
brought
you
donuts.
saber it.
All right, fair enough.
Um,
I'm afraid for hurting
You
the
totally
dog.
could.
We have to have a battle real quick. Real
gonna be
quick
a war.
battle. Real quick battle. Okay, good.
War. War never
War! Oh! Oh God, Jason, they're coming for us! They're coming over the wall! It's a DMCA takedown, the likes of which I've never seen! The bastards are coming over the wall! Those are ATSTs! I mean, they're off-brand, but you know what they are!
Hey, I'll set the traps.
I do
They're-
not look anything like Mr. Robot!
They're just being nerds. It's cute.
You're gonna make it.
I ain't got time to bleed!
You're gonna make it, soldier.
They're just faking war for a minute and then celebrating
I need
afterwards.
AA battery stats!
Stay on target.
Sorry, did I say AA? I meant AAA batteries.
damn it,
No!
Actually, it's those lithium ions, the tiny ones, for my watch.
I
like Mr.
bought
Robot.
just a bunch of them. See which one fits.
Oh, this is the worst 100 years war we've ever fought.
I didn't know it was 100 years. I told my wife it was 98. Now
Not
she's
even
gonna
done
wonder
with
where
this
I was.
caffeine-free Diet Coke. Hold on. Activate the Omega weapon. Yes. Activate it now. Yes.
This is how everyone looks like when trying to
Is that
do
it? Did it
any
work?
form of
I
improv,
don't know.
honestly. It looks it sounds exactly like this, me included. I am not
The Omega
innocent
weapon,
in
I
this.
hear it. Descending from orbit.
It's like the Hammer of Dawn.
This is what this is what VTuber collabs look like, honestly, when they try and make when they have a conversation or doing a bit.
Gonna cook all of our skin off, and we're gonna have to eat each other.
Oh God, not since the Russian Rebellion have I seen such carnage.
It keeps
Where's
going.
Bill Duran when we need him?
It keeps going.
Help! I call upon you, Evan, Caitlin.
D&D,
send
yeah,
down your
D&D night with the
mech
boys
armies.
be like
We'll
this.
use the critical mistake to turn them away.
To be fair, I
will
do have D&D on
wiggle
Monday,
the
so it's basically this,
drill.
honestly.
Oh, that's adorable. TMZ Cobra even showing up. That's don't worry about it, guys. We got this
they're
one.
good. They're good.
Yeah.
They're fine.
Sometime later. Okay, there.
Jason, I believe we've done it. We've defeated all of our
Paladins.
enemies.
Every one of them.
And I never finished my caffeine-free Diet Coke.
Is it still good? We should probably open some champagne.
Garbage.
Trash. It's been sitting there for like 100
We
years.
confiscated all the champagne.
We gotta drink
We
the
should
champagne.
saber it open.
Yes!
How do we do that?
With the blunt end of a blade.
A blunt end? Why not the sharp end?
Because where the lip of the collar of the bottle meets the glass itself, that is a stress point. So what we want to do is just give it enough of a crack in there for it to propagate around the lip, and the force spits the cork out.
I think all of these are screw-off
I
tops.
drunk caffeine drink. It really is.
Except for
Yeah,
that
it just
one?
it is.
Yes.
Oh,
All
they're
right,
all
here we
screw
go.
offs. That's not
Sir,
good.
I have
Okay,
discovered
there we go.
but one bottle that is untwisted and is not a screw-off top.
Would you like to do the honors, or shall I?
I'm scared either way, sir. I will hold this, because as I believe the ancient legends say, to properly saber, you must go along the seam and give it a good old pop at the top, and the whole thing goes flying off.
Right there.
Yeah, but you gotta drag it and be all like badoom.
All right.
Like our defeat of
Badoom.
everyone.
It was like Badoom. Are we ready? Are we gonna try it?
I feel like deep down you want me to do this.
I kind of want you to do it.
Okay, I'll do this.
I mean, I'll do it if you want me to.
Well,
But you've done it before.
yeah, okay.
You got this.
I'm also wearing glasses. That's probably not enough. I dedicate this sabering to the defeat of all our enemies, all the haters and losers.
Suck it, haters and losers.
We drink upon your tears.
All right, one more time. You got it.
Come on.
It's almost there.
He can do it.
Haters and losers, you are powerful, but we are unintimidated, as you can see. Haters and losers, the only way to show your disapproval is with a thumbs up and to click the subscribe and ring the bell.
Hey! Look at that, though. Isn't that the coolest way to do this? Isn't this the coolest way to open a champagne bottle? I think it is. And then it's a clean cut, so you can totally just chug it.
Feast upon the tears of the haters and the
I think.
losers. For we
You probably shouldn't.
just
That's very
run
sharp glass.
out to Saber.
I don't know.
And you want to check the first glass to make sure there's no
The pressure says so strong the
shards or
glass should
anything
break
like
off
that
with
inside.
clean
Yeah,
spin. No
'cause
shards
literally
of
there's
glass
glass
go
in
back
there.
inside.
Is there glass in there?
Theoretically.
Probably. Here's to us. Thank you. It's very hot.
It's hot out here.
Champagne.
Right, you know I loves me my Raycon earbuds.
Listen, there's a better way to do. Like I've seen, like if you want a proper guide for it, I think Alton Brown has done one. Yeah. Yeah, he does an example. So.
Champagne. In victory, you deserve it. In defeat, you need it. Or so said Napoleon, and he should know. As his light cavalry units stylishly charged around Europe a long time ago, they drank a great deal of the stuff, or so legend states. And being in a rush and not wanting to fuss with traditional modes of cork removal, these rakish lads got in the habit of simply lopping the tops off their bubbly with their sabers. The art of sabrage, or sabering, might seem a quaint anachronism were it not for the fact that deftly and nonchalantly displaying this bit of lethal legerdemain tells everyone in your party, 1, you've got a saber, 2, you're not afraid to use it, and 3, there's champagne. In this day and age, I can think of few reasons more noble. But since we live in the age of the litigator, I'll have to go ahead and tell you right now that under no condition do I advocate you attempting to undertake this desperately dangerous display
I
of
walked
panache.
away from
Odds
a
are you're
return
not
to
clean
Alton
anyway,
Brown.
and you'll just come off looking like a dope, fistful of glass, standing in a bubbly puddle. If you are going to go ahead and watch the rest of this video, I'll have to insist that you sign this waiver. I'll just leave it over here for now. Okay, here's how we do it. Begin with a bottle of French champagne.
Listen,
because they usually use thicker glass, and that'll make for a cleaner ring of glass at the top, or annulus. Stop snickering. All right, take the bottle to be sabered and turn it upside down in ice for at least 10 minutes. You want the neck to be as cold as possible. Meanwhile, let's review some physics. All right, due to a secondary fermentation inside the bottle, carbon dioxide produced by live yeast builds up pressure, typically in the range of 5 to 6 atmospheres. That's 90 pounds per square inch, which translates, of course, to 620 kilopascals. In other words, a corked bottle of champagne is a bomb waiting to go off. The point is to focus and control the blast to get to the stuff inside. This can be done by applying a sharp blow here, where one of the bottle seams meets the lip of the bottle, or annulus. Would you stop snickering? This is serious business.
Fine.
Or the blow must be focused and result from a smooth, rapid movement of a metal object. I've seen it done with a lawnmower blade, but hey, why use such a rare object when you've got a saber hanging around? Well, now that we've got our science straight, let's drink some champagne. By the way, please follow these steps exactly.
Oh, don't worry about it. You're not cursed.
We want to remove the outer foil from the bottle. All of it, all the way down. And then the cage, that's the wire thing that keeps the cork from just blowing out whenever it feels like. Please keep your hand or thumb over it just in case. Don't go pointing this at anybody or yourself. You'll put an eye out. Now, you're gonna wanna hold the bottle like this in your non-dominant hand with your thumb in the punt. What are people laughing at? I mean, that's what it's called, the punt. And rotate the bottle until you find one of the seams. You want that
I like how
right
he
up
really
top.
is
Now,
giving us
this,
like
this
a
angle will keep,
step-by-step
your hand out of the
tutorial.
way
I'm
of
kind
the
of
saber
pretending
blade,
to
which
do
is
it right
good.
now
I
in
should
my
add,
hands.
any sword with a gentle sweep will do the trick. Feel free to use your scimitar or your katana, but not, of course, your Hattori Hanzo.
That should be reserved for other things, all right? Now, I like to have a little clean towel or serviette over my hand just in case a cleanup is warranted. Okay, here we go. Okay. You're gonna put the blade flat against the glass. Doesn't matter if you use the back or the edge of the blade. Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Angle
matter.
it
Okay.
just a little bit.
Is this
Stand
still the same
right
video as
on that
before?
seam,
Sort
okay?
of.
Now you're gonna
He's just
swing
giving me
through
better information
like a
about
golf swing. Don't try to stop at the point of contact. Kind of like this. Oh, I left out one step. Make sure your saber is pointing away from populated areas, as the pressure in the bottle will turn that into a projectile. Now, done properly, the break will be completely clean, but you should always inspect the glass for any shards, and do be careful pouring, as the broken neck could be sharp and dangerous. Now, excuse me. Well, I wonder how far that went.
So long story short, I want this to happen at my wedding, and I want to do it. That's all. That's basically what I want. At the end of my wedding ceremony, I want to get a bottle of champagne and a sword and saber it. And serve it between me and my wife. That would probably be, honestly, that is the most lesbian thing I could possibly think of, and the best thing I want. We can arrange this. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Actually, no. It would be better if it was like a prop anime sword or something. Like, imagine like doing this with like fucking Excalibur. Or like one of Kirito's like dual blades, just kind of just getting a champagne bottle and just yeah, sword lesbian opens bottle with the sword. Why have I never seen art of this? I just realized this is the coolest thing ever, and no one's done it. I've not seen art. Wife, I know where we can get anime. I know where we can get anime swords too. It's the anime convention. Anyway, I hope you guys had a wonderful little Friday. Commission it. You know what? That is an idea. Buster Sword it. It's a big ass. Oh man, you're giving me ideas for commissions, and I'm like, I should totally act up. I should act on those. Okay, so thank you guys for tuning in. It was another wonderful Findin Out Friday. We learned a lot. We watched a lot about phones, and let's see who we can send our love and appreciation over to. Let me see. Just gonna switch over to this layout. Seeing who the hell we can talk to. Got to go here. Let me see here. Who do we got? Who do we got? Who do we got to read today? Let's send you guys over to... You know what? Let's go to Tane. She's doing also very chill time right now, chill media watching stream, so I'll be there for a little bit as well. So if you guys want to join me in this raid, give me a second. It was funny because she was streaming while I was streaming. Why did that not go? Oh, is it slash raid? Did I mess up? I may have messed up. Yeah. Am I daft? What am I doing wrong? I spelled her username wrong too. There. So, make sure you guys have a nice one. See you guys tomorrow, potentially, for the BattleBots watch party. It's gonna be great. And, hopefully I should make a schedule for next week, even though it's a little bit busy, so we'll see what's going on. But, have a good night. I'll talk to you guys later. Make sure you save before you go, of course. Have a good one. Bye-bye. Okay, we're gonna raid in a 5, a 4, a 3, a 2, a 1. Let's go.